Good evening, and welcome to the November 16th, 2015 Merrimack School Board meeting. Just a brief announcement that Chairman Ortega is excused from tonight's meeting. Would you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And agenda item number 2 is the approval of the November 2nd, 2015 minutes. Do I have a motion? Made by Andy Schneider and the second by Cinda Guglielmi. Are there any amendments that need to be made to the minutes? I had 2 small ones. On page 5, line 209. And, of course, my pages stick together. Debbie Clayton only has 1 B in it. And then on page 6, line 272. And I just would like to add something to the last sentence. It said it was about Greater Woods. So this area was previously used for target shooting and would be prohibited once it was acquired under conservation regulations. And that's all I had. With no further adjustments, I'd like to put the minutes to a motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0-0. And agenda item number 3 is public participation. And if there's any public participation tonight, please state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we will close public participation. Item number 4 is the acceptance of gifts and grants under $5,000. Matt Chevenel.
Thank you very much. Tonight it pleases me to inform the board and the public that we have a gift to the James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School from the PFA to fund the Enterprise City program in the amount of $1,400. Next, we have a gift from the U.S. First program, 200 Bedford Street, Manchester, New Hampshire. They're in the Millyard buildings, and the amount is going to Merrimack High School. It's $3,000. It's to support the Merrimack High School First Robotics team to offset the cost of equipment, travel, and other expenses related to the competition. So we thank them, and we thank the Mastrocola Upper Elementary School PFA for their generosity.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions about gifts and grants? That being said, do I have a motion to accept the gifts and grants? Made by Cinda.
I move that we accept with our gratitude.
Do we have a second? Made by Andy Schneider. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the student rep's position?
In favor.
Thank you. And the motion carries 4-0-0. On to number 5, which is consent agenda. Dr. Mark McLaughlin.
Thank you. On consent tonight is the approval of the purchase of food service transport van for up to $25,586 from the food service surplus funds.
May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda made by Davis? Do I have a second? Seconded by Andy. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. And the student rep's position?
In favor again.
Thank you very much. The motion carries 4-0-0 with the student rep in favor. On to item number 6, which is the response from Health Trust representatives to the board's query regarding the school district's guaranteed maximum health insurance rate for 2016-17. We'll be inviting to the table Bill Byron and Debbie Clayton from Health Trust. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And we basically asked you to come because we, at our last meeting, got our guaranteed maximum rate. We're hoping to get some understanding regarding what kind of went into the amount of the increase, which is 12.5% of the school district. And you gave us some supporting materials, and we were hoping that maybe you could kind of go over the numbers that were presented to us, and to the best of to any appropriate level, how you can kind of give us some background to that.
I absolutely can. First of all, the green button is lit. Can you hear me now? Should I bring it closer to my... Closer? How's this? Is it better? Okay, you're welcome. Just to start off by saying who Health Trust is, so the district does have their medical, prescription drug, and dental benefits through Health Trust. Health Trust was established in 1984 to assist New Hampshire local government in meeting the rising cost of employee benefit care. And what we are a nonprofit public sector risk pool established under the RSA 5B. With that being said, when we set our rates, you folks are part of what we call our July renewal cycle, so it's a two-step process. In the fall, we set a guaranteed maximum rate, or GMR. In the spring, we look at it again, and we call that the revisit period. And the reason why we do the two-step process is because we understand that you need a number for budget purposes. But we also understand that at this time of the year, if it's October, and we're setting rates that are going to bring us through June of 2017, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of prediction going on and setting the expectation of what type of medical and prescription drug claims will happen during that time period. So when we look at them in the spring, we are able to shave off about 5 months of old claims, bring on 5 months of newer claims, and also drop trend by 5 months. So we've been part of that two-step process for several years. Also, part of the way we set rates, we are subject to a public hearing on rates, which we had those on September 29th and October 1st. And at that time, the board, after analyzing the claims data of all of our groups that renew their benefits in July, saw that the overall increase for the July renewal cycle warranted an 8.65% increase. Again, that's overall. The range of all of our member groups that do renew in July, which is 149 member groups, was a negative 2.8% to a high of a 25% GMR increase. In terms of when we look at risk and the overall performance of any particular group, one good factor that we look at is what's called a loss ratio. Loss ratio is a strict calculation of claims over premium. And when we look at that, on average, they run between 65 and 110%. And actuarially, they consider a good group at 85 or lower. And currently, the Merrimack School District is running at a 90.1% loss ratio, so higher than what is considered favorable when you're looking at the true what we're paying out in claims for both the medical and the pharmacy side, as well compared to what we're collecting in premium. So you have the information that was sent. So I'm going to start with the one that's titled Merrimack School District Rate History Compared to July Pool Overall. And you're going to see the two different color bars. And so for 5 years, you can see what the increases have been for your district compared to the overall for the whole July renewal cycle. And you can see that the last 3 cycles, Merrimack School District had a higher than average increase. On the bottom, I also took the 5-year average of Merrimack School District and compared it to the 5-year average of the July pool overall, and you'll see that the 5-year average for the school district is 5%, with the July pool overall being a 3.7%. In looking back at the bar with the title 2015 RV, that means 2015 revisit period. So that was just this past spring. When we set the guaranteed maximum rate in the fall and we revisit in the spring the rates can come down, but they won't go any higher than what was issued in the previous fall. What happened during the 2015 revisit process is the town of the Merrimack School District ultimately deserved a 6.4% increase based on the way their claims were running. However, because we had issued a 4.4% GMR the previous fall, we had to honor that 4.4%. So at that point, we could kind of already see what was happening. The claims were exceeding premium at a higher level. Any questions on that graph?
So if you look back, you talk about the last 3 years, but the previous 2 years, 2012, 2013, Merrimack was below the average for the other ones. Do you have any explanation as to what might have occurred or any trigger that caused that change to occur?
The only trigger that can cause anything to go up or down is your own usage. So your claims utilization was lower than the average compared to the premium collected than it has been for the past 3 years.
And were there any dynamic changes to the July pool from your end of things? I mean, more schools, less schools, any changes like that?
No, our pool in and of itself has actually remained pretty constant for the past several years. I would say even 10 years, it's stayed pretty constant.
Davis?
So Debbie, first of all, thank you both for coming. Debbie, I think this is, the third meeting in a row you've been to for us, so we might as well just get you a seat up here.
Okay.
You mentioned that in 2015 when it was revisited, it should have been a 6.4 increase. The difference, the 2% difference that wasn't captured, was that rolled into what we're seeing now in the 12.2 max?
That's not rolled into what you're seeing now, but so how we made up that 2% was we shared it with all the other groups that maybe did better than average. So they would have, if someone would have received a 5%, but because they have to share in that excess, maybe they got a 6.5%. So no, that doesn't roll over, but you can kind of see the writing on the wall that if your claims are running higher than the premiums and we weren't able to collect the premiums, when it's time to set that calculation of what we expect that we need to collect in premium through the end of the rating period, that it's going to happen.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions on this specific slide? If you'd like to continue on.
Sure. Okay, so the next sheet, the next graph that I wanted to show you is that any of the health trust groups that have more than 50 covered employees or 50 eligible employees are what we call individually rated. Any group smaller than that is part of a larger pool. So you folks are individually rated, and it's not only what you receive for your guaranteed maximum rate or your increase overall, but it's also important to look at where your premium levels are. So maybe you're getting a high increase, but maybe your premium levels are lower than average, et cetera. It's kind of it's both are quite important, because I know when we were analyzing the district for many years, you had lower than average premiums, but I think these past 3 years are catching up with you a little bit. So what I've done on that next comparison sheet is I've compared the guaranteed maximum rates for the Access Blue 20 plan with the 10/20/45 prescription drug benefit, MSD, meaning you folks, and the single two-person and family monthly rates compared to 4 surrounding school districts. In terms of comparing the surrounding school districts, we find it more important to compare to surrounding districts as opposed to like-sized districts, because we want to capture the people that are seeing the same physicians, visiting the same hospitals and facilities. So you'll see here that for that particular benefit, you do have the highest set of single, two-person, and family rates for that one particular benefit. But in looking at the box on the bottom, I also took the time to give you another comparison tool to compare the Merrimack School District's overall GMR with those same 4 districts, as well as the 7-year average for Merrimack schools and those same 4 districts. You can see how those numbers are really all over the place, because depending on how their particular group is performing in terms of their claims utilization, those are the predictors year after year, and they're never consistent, because their population is their population. Everyone's needs change over time. Any question on this comparison?
Anyone from the board?
Okay. The next document that I'll review is actually the 3-page narrative on how we set your rates, and this is the same narrative that we would provide. Revisit GMR for not only the Merrimack School District, but any of the Health Trust member groups that have more than 50 covered lives, because the process is the same. The numbers are different, but the process is exactly the same. and we do like the fact that we can be as transparent as we can be with how these numbers are calculated. When I said earlier that you're individually rated, when you're individually rated, a greater impact of your own usage dictates what your premiums will be, dictates what your percentage increase will be. But I'm going to show you two major areas to show you that you're also part of a much larger pool and that you're protected by peaks and valleys. So on page 1 of 3, and I'm going to be reviewing the one titled July 2016 GMR Renewal. So in line A, these are your reported medical claims for the period of July 1, 2014 through June 30, 2015, and paid through July 31st of 2015. And you'll see the number over there is a little over 8.4 million. Line B, prescription drug claims, a little over 2.4 million. Line C just adds the two together. Line D is the first area where you'll see that the school district is protected by being part of a pool, and that is where we remove excess claimants that exceed $150,000. So that would be one individual. Remember, this can always be an employee or any of their covered dependents. So this would be an individual whose medical and prescription drug claims for this time period exceed $150,000. Any of the amount over and above the $150,000 we extract from this rate setting process, and you'll see where we add it back in so that everybody shares in part of those excess claimants on the next page. So you'll see for this period you have a little over $100,000 removed from your rate setting. After subtracting that, you get your net reported claims in line E of 10.7 million. Line F is medical and prescription drug, IBNR. That IBNR stands for incurred but not yet reported, because there are things that have a date of service during the rating period. However, it hasn't been processed through the pipeline. Maybe it's a claim that was processed in another state and there's a little bit of a delay. So every renewal, our actuaries and our board look at that to say, with technology, that percentage has gotten a lot smaller because things can be run in more real time. But for this particular period, they used 1.2%, resulting in an additional $132,000 in your rate setting to capture those claims that might not have shown up. So line G is just the calculation of A through F, leaving you with over $10.8 million in your rating claims. And moving on over to page 2 of 3, it's important to talk about line H, which is medical trend. Medical trend is a figure that our board and our actuaries take very seriously. They do an extensive study of what's going on all over the country, not just here in New Hampshire, as well as New England. But we're very fortunate that for this time period we're using 5.9% trend, which I understand is higher than we've used in years past. However, we still know that it's the lowest of all of our partners. Even Anthem's using a higher medical trend than the 5.9%. And because we're setting rates for such a long period of time, it's not a flat 5.9%. It's compounded over the number of months, which is a 24-month period. So the calculation is there that can show you how we calculate the 5.9% trend over the 24-month period, and it does result in line H adding an additional $1.3 million to your rate setting, so your overall claims, or prediction, I should say. Medical trend is the expectation that things will cost more. Your MRIs will cost more. Your doctor will charge more for their office visit. Will there be new technology? Will there be new pharmaceuticals, et cetera? Will they build a new building? So all of those things are taken into consideration when you're looking at medical trend. Line I brings us back to line D, where we were talking about the excess claimants. So line I, this is where all of our groups then share in that excess amount over $150,000. For this particular rate setting, it was 5.54%. So the district is paying more for that feature than they are receiving the benefit from in line D. It's very common for us to see that go back and forth over time depending on how you're performing. Line J includes a risk fee to manage risk capital as established by our board of directors. So the risk fee for this particular period is 2.56. Line K, we pay Anthem to process claims and negotiate with their providers. That's 3.68%. Line L, Health Trust administrative fee so that we can operate. That's 2.98% of your rating. Line M, state assessments, Affordable Care Act fees. That's 0.5%. And then line N, the projected member contributions, and we're just adding up rather, GHIJKLM. We take that line N and we compare it to O, which is what your current premiums are, your current single, two-person, and family premiums, depending on what individuals are enrolled in, whether they're enrolled in a point-of-service plan or an HMO plan. And that is that's currently for this period was a little over $12.4 million. Moving over to page 3, if we just took those two numbers and said, what do we expect that we need to collect in premium from the district in order to pay anticipated claims through the end of June of 2017, the district would have experienced a 12.7% increase in line P. That's your group experience alone. But we understand that not every group is 100% credible. So moving to line Q, our actuaries don't feel that any of our member groups are truly 100% credible until they have 1,000 covered lives, meaning that the medical and prescription drug claims that you're experiencing today are going to be the same exact that you're experiencing a year from now, the year after that, et cetera. Even though you are a larger group for Health Trust at 89.2%, we look at 89.2% and we base that to line P, and then the difference is based off line R. So line R is the 8.65 that I mentioned earlier, which is the July overall. So a smaller percentage of the July overall is based off of you yourself in line P. So blending that percentage together, or weighing those percentages together, you end up with line S, which is a 12.3% increase. Every year there's rounding reconciliation in line T, which is 12.2%. And then every now and again we have a real tough year and we find the need that we need to cap one of our member groups. So it's been a while, but say, for example, we had an extreme outlier that deserved, say, a 35% increase, and we said, let's cap them at 30. Line U would be where everyone shared in protecting that group from, an astronomically high increase. But like I said, it's been a while since we found the need to cap any of our member groups. But that's where you'd see that reflected is in line U. Any questions on the rate setting process?
Davis?
Back on page 2, if you could explain to me the difference between J and L, the difference between the Health Trust risk fee and the administrative fee.
Absolutely. Health Trust needs to have what's called a capital adequacy fund. That is what we consider our reserves, so that if for some reason we set rates and we're way off, we still are under the obligation to pay all of the medical and prescription drug claims that come through.
Okay.
So we set that amount every year, and that is the amount that's used to fund it.
When you use the word reserve, I totally get it now.
Oh, okay.
So
Thank you.
I understand what the difference is between the two now.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cinda?
I just had one question regarding the excessive claim calculation and pooling. And do I understand it correctly that every entity that participates in Health Trust has the one excessive claim that gets pooled together regardless how big or small the group is?
If a group has more than 50 covered lives, then they have the same exact rate setting process, same 3 pages. So for any one individual whose claims exceed $150,000, for you folks, when we saw that number of $114,000, that could be 10 people, that could be 1 person, but yes, that's the same regardless of size of any of our member group.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions? I have a couple. You talk about covered lives, so it'd be employees and their dependents, and if they have a family or a dual plan. Is that correct? So covered lives are all people covered under the plans, not just employees.
Correct.
And do you know how many covered lives we have in the Merrimack School District? which I'm putting you on the spot, I know, sorry.
I can get that number. I don't
Sure.
have that with me.
Not a problem. Just seeing how close we are to the to that 1,000, which you said would give us a full credibility rating, I guess.
When we determine credibility, that's employee only.
Okay.
When I say covered lives, that's employee and all of their covered dependents. So you're
Okay.
dealing with the claims experience of everyone's covered dependents. When you're referencing credibility on page 3, that's employee only.
Employee only. Okay. That's not the way I was reading it, so thank you for the clarity. And then I know that we talked a couple of weeks ago at our board meeting about how our healthcare cost containment committee in the district is considered an example of ways to control costs. Can you give an example of how Merrimack's healthcare cost containment committee has helped to even keep this at a 12.5% increase that we're facing for next year?
Well, I think one thing that Bill Byron and I bring to the table frequently, because we have these discussions on a regular basis, is it would be wonderful if we could generate a report that said, here are all the claims that you didn't experience because they were avoided due to additional wellness initiatives in any of your given schools, because by far you were the most active of any of our member group. Unfortunately, we can't capture what doesn't happen because that has taken place. But I do know that we've had the opportunity with the team to look at the some of the higher claimants and some of the reasons behind the increase, and I can tell you that they're not lifestyle-related type claims, meaning they couldn't be avoided, which that's another message that we try to share at the committee level on a regular basis is it's nice when we can address the things that would make someone healthier, but we do understand that no matter how healthy someone's lifestyle may be, you still may have a genetic makeup that warrants you to become ill, and that can become an expensive medical or prescription claim or a combination of the two. So they are by far the trendsetter and an example that we use as often as we can, but we just don't have the ability to bring it back to say you could have had a 20, but because of all of your initiatives keeping everyone healthier, you got a 12. But it's something we can't document.
Can't document, but you would
Right.
definitely say that there's a measured improvement in our rate because of it. That just can't be.
Well, we can tell you that based on participation rates, and I'll give you an example. One of the things is for people to take their health assessment. The Health Trust book of business right now, overall, 38% of the people that are eligible to take the health assessment take it. Merrimack School District, highest, 55%. We have a program called the Smart Shopper Program. The Merrimack School District has been a pilot for the Smart Shopper Program when it's during its inception. They promote it at every opportunity. They utilize me as a resource. I can tell you that I'm invited into each school to do demonstrations on the Slice of Life program. I'll be doing that tomorrow, as a matter of fact, at a couple of your schools. And I also do a demo of the Smart Shopper program. I do presentations on medical consumerism to teach people how to use their health plan properly, how to become a part of the Slice of Life. So the school district itself and the Health Cost Containment Committee that you have, I myself am proud to be on that team because they are the trend setters. They take the time to do everything they possibly can to educate their employees and their families at a better rate than any other group that we currently have. So they've done everything that they could do and utilized our resources as much as possible, and we appreciate that. In the Smart Shopper program alone, they have saved tens of thousands of dollars by getting people to do the Smart Shopper program. You know, those are facts. Those are claims that would have been higher if people didn't participate in those programs. So as far as what's being done, that particular committee is doing everything possible. They have put people in our health and safety coordinator academy. We are training your employees on how to utilize the Slice of Life program and the medical consumerism piece and taking that back to each of the schools to teach them how to be better medical consumers. So from that perspective, they're doing quite a bit to try to keep costs mitigated.
Excellent. And I know that we as a board take that very seriously. Davis is our board rep and does take time out of his schedule to attend those meetings and from the board's perspective, get a good idea of what we're doing in the district to maintain a healthy staff and controllable costs, obviously. So that's the name. So are there any other questions of the board about the presentation tonight? Andy?
So there's one section you didn't go over, and that's the section that talks about the July 2015 revisit renewal. It's the last section. We had it. I don't know if you didn't know that we had it or not.
That was the comparison.
Oh, yes.
Yep. Here it is. I have it here.
No, what I included that for was more of a comparison. Once I reviewed in detail the 2016 GMR renewal, I wanted to provide you another rating cycle so that you could take what I had explained through the revisit through the GMR process
Yep.
and look back at the revisit period. For example, you can see from the revisit period, which is 7 months ago, that the claims have gone up for both medical and pharmacy. Your excess claimants in line D have gone down. But that's really what I included that document for, is more of a comparison after reviewing the revisit, was to see what it, I'm sorry, I keep confusing my letters. So after going over the July 16 GMR rate setting process, you would have a reference from July of 2015 from the revisit process.
Right. Now, the question that I have is,
Okay.
now that I sort of understand I'm not going to say logic, the process that you've gone through and all this stuff, one of the things that really keys where the increase is going to go is the medical trend section, because that then is the trigger for everything below it. On the one that you just went through and reviewed, it talked about trend factor of 5.9% that you calculated over 24 months, which came out with a number of 1.316 for this year, 1.316 million. On the revisit that you did, you only base it on 19 months, which was reduced by 5. So the percent that you calculated it on, instead of being 5.9, excuse me, times 19 months, or 24 months is 19.
Right.
So the number was lower. And then everything below it seemed to be a lower amount based on that. So it seems like a year ago you were using a different number of months to calculate the risk.
This was just done in the spring. So
Right.
July revisit is done in end of March, early April. I'm not sure of the exact date, but that's the revisit period. So that's the 5-month swing that I was explaining from the
Right.
beginning. So fewer months of trend. So you have less trend to calculate into your increase, as well as you've gotten rid of 5 months of old claims, brought in 5 months of new claims.
Right.
So this wouldn't be apples to apples, meaning if we had showed you the GMR period
Right.
for 2015, it would have been apples to apples.
Right,
This
because
was
that's
the
what confused me, because
Right.
what you did is these numbers sort of supported the fact that it was a lower number last year, and this number was taken off a different number of months, and it was, the apples to apples would be just like you described.
Yes.
What you did for the initial that was based off the beginning analysis, because it was hard to compare. I mean, we don't do this for a living. You guys do this for a living, and we're always looking for, well, why is it higher? Well, you start analyzing, well, the months are different or whatever. So here's hoping that when we get to spring, maybe something's occurred or whatever that's will cause us to be less, because from a budget perspective, it's a big impact for us this year. So.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that we talked about is, if you go back to the first sheet that I did review with your five-year increase history, in the fall of 2013, the district was looking at a guaranteed maximum rate over 14%. But you can see in 2014, your revisit ended up being 3.1%. So sometimes there are significant fluctuations between the guaranteed maximum rate in the fall and the revisit increase in the spring. Because I remember having this conversation with the committee, because the committee was feeling like they had done such hard work, why would they be looking at such a high GMR? And we had a lot of the similar discussions. We looked at usage, we looked at rate setting, which we do at the committee level. And then in the spring, I had much better news for everybody, because between lowering the trend calculation by that 5-month swing and then whatever claims left, whatever claims came on, made a significant difference in what you ultimately realized in 2014.
And Andy, I think you asked a question earlier about a few years back, what things may have transpired that caused the rates to be lower. And although we can't put a dollar value to it, a few years back, as far as participation in the health assessment, it was up in the 70% area. So more people were participating in the Slice of Life program. We had numbers that were extremely high, so there were more people in health coaching. There were more people participating in the programs. Right now at 55%, that is a fantastic number in comparison to the 38% for the Health Trust overall. But back when the numbers were up in the 70th percentile, 70% of the people filling it out, that's more people looking at their health.
And Matt, did you have a question?
Totally kind of unrelated to the rate-setting process. Just a question on the individual plans. How come in the past number of years the HMO plan, and I may get my terms mixed up because there has been some differentiation in what you call them, but the HMO plan that we know as Matthew Thornton has increased at a more rapid rate than the Blue Choice. And if it continues, the two of them are going to converge, and they will eventually cost the same.
Your observation is absolutely correct. Our actuaries and board review what's called the relativities, the relative value between each of our health plans, and every factor of a health plan, whether it's a visit limitation, an office visit copayment, a deductible, they all are part of the calculation to determining the relative value of the plan. We have, in fact, had plans over time match rates. So now at this point through our, I know at the last meeting we reviewed all the changes. Well, we've got plans merging together because there's no reason to have two different plans for, a 0.25% difference in the premium. So yes, your observation is correct. So over time, when setting a Blue Choice rate for the possibility that people will access claims out of network isn't necessarily as much of an impact over time when you into looking at the relative value of each plan. So there's all sorts of factors that go into it, but you are correct that it will continue. We expect it will continue like that.
Yeah, because we're seeing as a district a trend that people are moving from the Blue Choice to the Matthew Thornton. So you have more customers at that base right now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is done because it's a less expensive, it's a less costly to the district and the employee to participate in that plan. And pretty soon, if they do converge, it's not going to be any different than Blue Choice or anything like that. So at that point in time, if they are equal in cost, do you ever foresee a convergence of those two plans into some other type of product that you would offer?
Well, we kind of almost see...
I know this is just conjecture, and I'm asking you to look ahead a few years, but...
Understood, and I actually see that somewhat of what will happen on July 1st of 2016 with the Matthew Thornton Blue Plan, which we discussed at the previous meeting, where if you're on that plan, it will become Access Blue, and you can choose a primary care provider from any of the 6 New England states, and there are no referrals required. So that's a significant change in the way the plan is designed right now. Like you said, I don't know the answer to what will happen in the future, but that has been happening on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you.
You want? Do you have a question? Did you? Okay, Davis.
Can you explain to me, Debbie, I'm still on the July 15 revisit. Mm-hmm. Line M, the external specific stop loss. I think I understand what that is, but before I embarrass myself, can you explain to me what it is?
Yes, there was a time when our regulators ordered us to purchase stop-loss insurance. So that's why you'll still see this on here. However, over time, we were able to prove that we had no need to, in fact, purchase stop-loss insurance. We were financially strong enough to experience and protect ourselves from any overall loss that would be considered subject to the stop-loss amount. So you're seeing a amount of 0 because we no longer purchase stop-loss insurance.
So this stop-loss coverage, is it catastrophic coverage?
It was.
Okay. And what was that? What was the kick-in on it?
I'd have to check. I don't
Okay.
remember.
All right. Well, then let me ask a follow-up question. Would our rate have been affected if the stop loss was still in place now, with the one however many over 5, or what was it, 150,000 that we had?
No, our stop loss was so high that none of our claimants had ever hit that, which is
Oh,
how
okay.
we were able to show that we don't need it.
So it was truly catastrophic.
Truly catastrophic.
Okay. Thank you. I apologize. In case you hadn't noticed, there are quite a few district employees in the audience tonight, and I'm sure they've been very enlightened. And I hope that this has been an educational experience not only for us but for you guys as well. Because every time you come, I do learn something new about how it goes. I appreciate you taking the time to dissect this for us, because it's no secret. I'm in the business, and I don't understand how premiums are calculated half the time. So this really helps, and it's also encouraging to know that we do, or that we can rather, have an effect on what rates we are charged by the way we handle our claims. You're perfect example of being health smart, or health insurance smart, and how to actually use the coverage. I think it's a perfect example, and my fellow board members can attest that every time I talk about one of our meetings, I always bring up the Smart Shopper and how much money we have saved versus how much money we could have saved, and the delta is just tremendous. So I appreciate the timing was perfect. I appreciate you guys coming out tonight.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
for having us.
Yes, thank you very much. Just I would close on that every year, one of the biggest things we talk about when we go through our budget process is where the increases come from with our costs year over year. And health insurance is always one that has, an unavoidable increase to the district, and then, of course, to the taxpayer, because we do have to answer to them. And we've never been able to really provide such granularity about where that number comes from. And this is so insightful, I think, not just for the district, the board, the staff, but for those who ask, why is health insurance so much? Why does it go up so much? It really is. We're doing what we can to contain it. We have evidentiary proof of that, but there's still claims drive it, and so is the increased cost of healthcare year over year. So that level of granularity and that presentation tonight, I think, was probably one of the most valuable presentations we've had preparing for our budget. So we thank you so much for taking your time out this evening, and we do appreciate all that you do to keep us, contained in cost. So. And give us options.
Thank you.
So, that being said, thank you again for coming. And we are moving on to item number 7, District Mental Health Committee Report. I invite to the table Julie DeLuca, Lorene DeRoe, John Fabrizio, Kathleen Hoppe, Laura Livy, and Fern Seiden. I believe you have a presentation, so we'll be setting up for a moment. And when you're ready, the floor is yours. If you'd like to do a brief introduction of what we're going to go over, that'd be great.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Julie DeLuca, and I'm the assistant principal at Thornton's Ferry School. And tonight you will hear from other members of the District Mental Health Committee as we present our work to date around mental health in our district. Our position within the school board agenda is very interesting. Before us, we heard a discussion around healthcare and healthcare cost. And after our presentation, fellow educators that are here in the room will present curriculum updates from a variety of disciplines. Mental health is an integral component of health care and healthcare expenses, as well as students' mental health directly impacts a student's availability and readiness for learning and academics in our district. Last August, Superintendent Jaffrey identified the need for a district mental health committee. Members of the committee represent the 6 schools in our district, and these district helpers, as often known by our students, represent a diversity of backgrounds, experiences, and skills in the field. May I ask members of the committee to please introduce themselves?
John Fabrizio, Director of Special Services.
Oh, there it is. Laura Livy, Behavior Specialist at Merrimack, James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School.
Laureen Duro, one of the school psychologists within the district.
And I'm Kathleen Hoppe, School Counselor at Reed's Ferry School.
Tonight, we also have members of our committee here in the audience. If we go ahead.
Christina Lopez, Merrimack Middle School Guidance.
Sherry Goldberg, out-of-district coordinator and juvenile court liaison.
And also not here, but a vital part of our committee is Kate Harrington, the school counselor at Mastrocola Elementary School. Why now? In the previous budget cycle, a proposal was made to hire a mental health worker at the middle school level. After further consideration and discussion by the Merrimack leadership team, this position was tabled. An essential component of the success of our district is and has been the systemic long-term planning that guides our educational investments and prudent allocation of funds and resources. When we make capital improvements to our buildings, we follow a capital improvement plan. Furniture investments are made within the context of school-based 5-year furniture plans, and decisions regarding technology investments and resources are guided through the district technology plan. As this is a critical component of our success, Superintendent Jaffrey and the Merrimack leadership team knew that any investments in mental health must follow the same formula and same approach. Today, we are recommending creation of a system of care and learning supports for students with mental health needs in our district. This may or may not include the addition of a mental health worker as originally proposed. Kathy Hoppe later will review our strengths as a district and how this guides our work. Specifically, the time is right for Merrimack to address these concerns, as we can now leverage the district-wide response to instruction framework, overall focus monitoring plan, and behavioral processes already in place for all students. Our recently developed and approved logic model is a roadmap of success for students that includes goals for systems of support, as well as educator and community collaboration to establish learning environments that are safe and promote lifelong self-directed learning. This past summer, a new landmark study was published in the American Journal of Public Health. The study followed over 800 students for over 20 years from kindergarten to mid-20s, and the study found a link between a child's social and emotional intelligence at the age of 5 to how well they were doing in adulthood. 2 key messages suggested to educators was that social and emotional learning can be just as important as cognitive skills, and that emotional intelligence has a strong correlation to school readiness and life success. Our timing could not be better in New Hampshire. The state is at a critical juncture regarding mental health concerns. As you can see on this slide are a few key data points around mental illness for our youth in New Hampshire. You can see that 1 in 5 youth ages 5 to 19 have mental health disorders. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for our youth 10 to 24 years of old. 4.4 school districts have only formal partnerships with mental health community and agencies. Our state is 34th in funding for these mandates and has put our schools in a very precarious position between balancing mental health needs within an educational setting. Schools do not want to become mental health clinics. However, mental health issues impact our students' academic success. Fern Seiden and Laura Livy will highlight this later in our presentation. As I indicated, few very large districts have partnered with state, federal, and local resources to develop a system of care and learning supports. The state has received funding to support a variety of mental health and behavioral needs in the districts. You will often hear things like Project Aware, Mental Health First Aid, Safe and Healthy School Grants, behavioral health initiatives, and only 8 out of 179 school districts in our state benefit from this funding. And these districts are typically your larger districts of Concord, Laconia, Franklin, and Raymond, to name a few. Most of us are very thankful to live and work here in this community. People may wonder if there are truly mental health concerns with our youth and if these mental health issues truly impact our schools in Merrimack and our students' learning and education. As fortunate as we are to live and work in Merrimack, yes, mental illness needs and concerns do truly impact our students' educational process. Although one of our first action items is to better collect data around mental health in our schools, one meaningful data point is that between 35 to 40% of our students with 504 plans and individual education plans in our older grades are for mental health disorders. As educators, there appears to be a lack of clarity and understanding of mental health disorders and symptoms in our schools with limited district-wide data on this front. While students identified with mental health disorders are supported in each of our schools, there are still a large number of students who may have unidentified needs that struggle with, for example, anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. Each school is working diligently to support all students within their schools. Student transitions between schools, especially for those students who are not identified, can be fragmented and reactionary. When you mention mental health, the first thing people do is share their stories and concerns about mental illness. We strive to shift this mindset as we hope that through a system of care and learning supports, our future conversations are less about mental illness and more about mental health, wellness, and well-being for our students in schools. At this juncture, though, our conversation and our focus is on mental illness needs and concerns. At this point, I've painted a story of our state, highlighted some concerns and needs across our school district. However, this truly does not capture what is happening each and every day in our schools. Fern Seiden and Laura Livy will now briefly describe the day in the life for some of our students here in Merrimack as they walk through the doors of our schools and sit in our classrooms to learn.
Ms. Livy, can we actually just have you work closer to the table with the microphone on so that we can pick it up, or the cordless over there? So, thank you.
Yep. This girl got in a, can you hear me? Okay. This girl got in a fight with her parents the night before, an argument over homework and chores. She went to bed angry. Had trouble sleeping, woke up late, didn't eat breakfast. She missed the bus. Left her homework at home, got into school, and her teacher said, "Time to turn in your homework." She got upset. Decided to chuck a pencil across the room and scream at her teacher. At 9 o'clock in the morning, she finds herself in the assistant principal's office talking about her behavior. These seem like minor things to this girl. These aren't major issues, but to her, her backpack is full. And she comes into school every day with all these things going on. Some kids internalize the problems, all this weight on their backpack, on their shoulder. They don't always have the coping skills to handle it. Sometimes with internalized frustration leads to anxiety, depression. It leads to sometimes more dangerous things, cutting, suicidal thoughts, harmful behavior. Sometimes, if they don't internalize their behavior, they externalize it. And that's when you see kids have very explosive, dangerous, how would I describe it? Behavioral problems at school, okay? And then they, you want to catch it? Then they show us their behaviors.
Within these backpacks are many factors that affect the child in different ways. So many backpacks are filled with accumulated stressors we don't even know about. Our focus is to help students be ready and available to learn not just in the moment, but over time so that they can meet with success throughout their educational careers. In other words, our interventions are not just to solve the immediate problem of getting the student back to class, but to help students develop the coping skills and resiliency necessary to be college and career ready. The work we do, or that we hope to do as a committee, is to better understand how we can most effectively help these students at each tier of intervention with different levels of coordinated supports. We want to really examine our work and improve what we do so as to most effectively support all students whose backpacks have become so full that they are having a difficult time learning. Laureen Doro is now going to speak to the essential questions we have developed to guide this process.
So we have formulated 3 essential questions. The first one, what is the depth and scope of the mental health needs of Merrimack students? And what are the strengths and weaknesses of the system of care they have available to them? The next question, how can we blend district, community, and state efforts to promote a broader continuum of evidence-based practices to support the mental health of all students? And our third question, what are the features of an interconnected and systematic framework of care and learning supports that will integrate mental health supports into the Merrimack School District? We hope the data that we collect to answer these questions will lead us to best meet the mental health needs of our students. Our shared purpose aligns with our roadmap to success outlined in the district logic model, is to develop a system of care and learning supports for students with mental health needs in our district. Research is clear that in order to effectively help and effectively address the mental health needs of students within a district, schools should develop a multi-tiered model that aligns with academics and behavioral needs. Essential to the success of this model is district-wide oversight, multi-year purview, an effort and frameworks that extends beyond the schools into the community and state. First, before we move to solutions that may only help fill gaps in the short term, we need to spend time understanding what the true needs and priorities are in our district. This means spending the time to understand the problem and connecting the state and community resources that may have already succeeded in this area and who may be willing to partner with us in the short and long term. Again, our vision is to move away from reacting to the mental health problems and crises to proactively developing a system that provides students with the social and emotional intelligence to thrive in learning and life. We have many strengths in our district, and which Kathy is going to discuss next.
As was mentioned before, it is critical as a first step to examine the district's strengths that we have and that already exist before we consider future planning. We know that we benefit from leadership, commitment, and support, as Julie had stated in her introduction. Also in Merrimack, we thrive in a culture of collaboration. The district operates under the philosophy that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. No work here is done alone. We collaborate daily on projects large and small, and that extends throughout the district in the form of committees, teams, PLTs, and so forth. In other words, behind every great person are a bunch of other great people. Third, district helpers in the district have diverse experiences and backgrounds. All district professionals contribute to the academic success of students. In this sense, though, we're referring to helpers as those who do not have the responsibility of providing direct instruction in core subject areas, but those who work in consideration of the well-being of our children in some way. So this includes school counselors, school psychologists, past teachers, nurses, behavior specialists, and other helpers. Most of these professionals have a minimum of master's degrees, while some have advanced graduate degrees and even doctoral degrees. We have diverse backgrounds that include social work, work at inpatient and outpatient mental health care facilities, mental health work with adults and children, and even classroom teaching experience at various grade levels. Next, we already have multi-tiered systems in place. Our district efforts are organized within multi-tiered frameworks, such as the district response to intervention model, focused monitoring, curriculum plans and committees, behavioral frameworks. These frameworks and models can be expanded to include mental health needs and social emotional instruction. We also have ongoing conversations with community and state resources. This includes district representation and dialogue with community groups such as Merrimack Safeguard, Leaning Forward, the YES Support Program, collaboration with Merrimack Police and School Resource Officers, CERESC, New Hampshire CBIS, and the New Hampshire Children's Health Insurance Program. Finally, there are district-wide protocols already in place for safety planning. Helping professionals have already met and collaborated to develop safety protocols, including the suicide risk assessment, that are already being utilized in our district. Next, John Fabrizio will talk about the multi-tiered systems in more detail.
Thank you. You've all seen this slide before, I hope, by this point. And this is our Merrimack School District RTI model. And this model talks about all of our students in the middle of that core green spot, where really it's the instruction for all of our students. Then it goes off to talk about interventions for some students, either extensions or interventions for their needed, and then the outlying areas, it is the intensive interventions or intensive extensions for students. This model right now is geared toward the continuous service of support for learning for all students. And in this model, it encompasses all of our tiers of support, and that's with behavior, academics, and mental health. So in this, it's kind of like a three-legged stool. And if you look at this next slide, and you read our RTI model, it says in our RTI definition, how does this effort fit that definition? Well, let me read to you. The RTI is a productive, tiered process where each student receives and each educator provides high-quality, differentiated core instruction with interventions through a systematic integration of district resources using data over time to make collaborative educational decisions matched with individual students' needs in academic, social, and emotional and behavior areas. So, like our stool here we have in our picture, we have very strong academic needs. We have very strong behavioral needs, and we have social emotional needs. This district does a wonderful job right now with our academic needs. Tonight you'll hear about many of the curriculums that are coming forward that we have worked on. We have done a wonderful job with our PBIS efforts and our responsive classroom efforts and collecting data over behavior using our Power School system. We need to grow in an area of emotional support to fully support those students on that stool and fully support the needs of the students in our district. Next, I'm going to turn to Laura Livy. She's going to talk about some of the subcommittee work that we have been doing.
Thank you, John. There's 3 different subcommittees that we have with our mental health committee. Tools really is about what's in their backpack. How do we discern and determine what stressors kids have what are their individual needs. So we do that through needs assessment, resource mapping, and environmental scans. Resource mapping is really about finding out what supports we have placed in Merrimack that are really going to help students and where are the gaps in service. Environmental scans is really examining all the environments that the kids move in and out of in their daily lives, sports and after-school activities, the bus, schools. How do students move in and out of those things, and how do they do in those different areas? Data is really about how do we follow student needs over the years? How do we collect the data? How do we determine what their needs are? And the connections and resources. This is probably the area that I'm most excited about, is how do we engage support in the community and in existing agencies that are going to be there to help support us and follow kids, and it's more of a community collaboration than anything else. Now it's back to John for the next steps in our committee.
So next steps, where are we going from here? You'll see on the slide before you, we have several steps to get up our stairs and up our ladder. First, we're going to broaden our committee. We need to include nurses in our committee and possibly teachers who of the emotional and behavior disturbed in our past programs. We need to conduct a needs assessment, environmental scan, resource mapping, gap analysis, and readiness, and look at our readiness checklist. We need to connect with those community resources, those state partners, and start identifying who are these stakeholders, who are these groups that we need to work with. We need to organize and identify our PD needs, our training needs, professional development across the board. Then we need to garner broader-based support and buy-in throughout the district. That's a hard task, but one we're up to. Then we have to adopt written multi-year plan, which outlines all of these strategies, which is accepted by both our leadership team and by our school board. Is there any questions from the board?
We'll start with Jake at the end of the table.
Just, you had mentioned in one slide the intervention and extensions, and I get the intervention, but I was just hoping you could clarify what extensions entails.
It's based on the theory that everyone needs something and something more to learn. We're never done learning, and it means that although we all want to learn, sometimes that becomes more difficult and we need to intervene, or sometimes we learn what's presented and we need more because we have a thirst to learn more.
Cinda and then Davis.
And could you explain a little bit more about the timing for this process? I can see what's the immediate, and I'm just trying to get a feel for, at least as of this point, what you're expecting.
We are probably looking at least in a minimum of a 3-year process. Just like you'll see tonight, a lot of the curriculum committees take multiple years. Mm-hmm. This is a multi-year process. It needs to be to want to understand what the needs are in our district. That takes time, as well as to build broad understanding and to really make some prudent decisions around allocation of resources. So we're looking at minimum 3 years.
I can see there's definitely a lot of work here, and I think I really want to commend the effort to put into place, like what you said earlier, something proactive. This is a really big thing for kids, and I think it's really important, and all the work that you're doing is really important and can affect kids for the rest of their lives. So I think this is great, and I look forward to seeing some of the data that you come up with and see how that plan progresses over time. But I'd like to thank you for the work you're putting into it. I think this is really great.
You're all set, Cinda? Davis, and I think Andy has his hand up as well.
So this is coming to us right before budget time, and I have to ask the question, what is it that you're looking for financially? What can we expect to see in the upcoming budget to help support this?
In the upcoming budget cycle, we're looking at possible funding through contracted services at this point. That is where we may have Eric Mann from New Hampshire CBIS work with us on helping us develop some needs assessments tools and resource mapping, but that would come out of our contracted services line item.
So basically, you're going to be looking for help, keeping the committee as it is in the near future, and looking for
Yes.
help on what's next.
Exactly.
Is that the right understanding?
It is, and,
Okay.
and I addressed the mental health worker right away because that was an issue that came up, and I think it brought awareness to this issue. And so the question may be, why aren't we just hiring that? But it really, at this point, we don't know that to be the answer to this. And it's really, when you look at the research, it says the first thing is building a system of care and support. And then within that, making some decisions around how you're going to allocate your resources. And we're just not at that place yet to make that decision.
Perfect. I echo Cinda's thanks for putting this together, bringing this forward to us. I think I'm very impressed and very pleased at the systematic approach that you guys appear to be taking here in finding out, okay, let's find out what the problem is first and how to attack it instead of just throwing things at it. So I appreciate that, and I think it'll be much more effective that way as well.
Are you also Davis? Andy?
So folks that know me know that this area sort of hits close to home after my last 12 years through the Merrimack School District as a parent. One of the things that I know and that you all know is that when it comes to actually implementing and working with kids with mental health, getting parents involved is one of the key aspects, as well as the whole area around it. But there's also an opportunity in your planning stage to get input from parents that have been through the process. So I would encourage you to, as you're building your subcommittees and teams, to get input from parents that have been through Merrimack. And I'll offer me as one of the examples, because I went all the way from evaluation at 3 years old all the way through graduating somebody, and I know what works, where areas could be improved, and also could be able to give feedback on sort of what you think. So I think that's going to be a valuable input because it gets the parental involvement into it, because right or wrong, parents that really want to be involved become experts in areas where you guys don't have the expertise. And it's not because you don't want to have it, it's just you're not exposed to it. So, you know, there's many things we as parents can bring to the table as part of this to help you round it out. So.
Well, thank you, Andy. And in fact, when we talk about the needs assessment, that was also very much a part of our conversation. And I did share, because I sit with you on Merrimack Safeguard, your words around transitions and moving students through the schools and how that can be a different experience certainly resonated with me, and I was able to share that with the committee. So we do need to continue work in that area. So thank you.
Any questions from the administration?
No, I just want to commend the committee because they have been working since the summer. And so this presentation really is a culminating event for the first stage. And the thing that so impresses me is what is happening internally with the talent we have, that we're not going to throw money, if you will, or funds at it, but more take an in-depth look at where we are, who we are, and off of that, come up with a plan. And I just love the fact that plans guide us. They're an important input in the district logic model, and the mental health plan will be one of those inputs when it's completed.
Yeah. David, you had something else?
I just want to commend the committee for taking the time to figure out what our learning styles were, because that really hit home, and it was much more effective than just explaining, you know, something or a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. It really it really got, I don't want to say got to me, but it really drove home the point of what you were trying to explain to us. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
And I guess in closing, I would say that, you know, this district has been taking an active approach. We've had Lynn Lyons here, I think, 3 times already. And it was the district parent group that sponsored it for special education. But it wasn't about dyslexia or autism. It was about anxiety and learning. It truly was to any child that does have anxiety when it comes to education or even in just their day-to-day life. And she's been a valuable asset to the point we always get over 100 people at every attendance. when she comes to our district. So we know that there's a need out there because the parents show up when we offer a resource to address it. So this is, I think, a tip of the iceberg. I'm really looking forward to more data that you'll be collecting. I think you do have some at least ground points within your buildings as far as what you're seeing from your students, active cases in each building. I'm sure you have them in every single building. And from that, what resources do we have? Where can we step up and be stronger? And I think this committee's work is going to be an example of how to get it done. I did have a question because you talked about grants, and I know you were asking about budgets, but I think that you're talking about the opportunity for grants and how I think 8 districts use a certain funding. What kind of funding is available, and what kind of funding has your committee uncovered?
Excellent question. So John and I are actually meeting with the Department of Education. There is now, Mary Steady is in charge of the new student wellness and student well-being for the state. Through that office, there are grants through Project Aware, which is federally funding, as well as Safe and Healthy Schools. So as we work to uncover the connections in the state and community, we are starting to see that there may be funding available as well as state level, but also in the community. So that's why we're not saying we need X right now, because we don't know what is available and what is out there. And so we are beginning to have those conversations. We're meeting with the DOE. We're meeting with some local agencies. Fern sits on, and Laura Livy sit on some local community agencies here in Nashua that might be helpful. So I think there is some excitement. There's some opportunity.
Excellent. And I think to that end as well, what resources, because I think you're talking about the Department of Education, some resources that they have and materials they may have.
Exactly. So as part of it, and as we are on our discovery and our journey here, we have found that, especially through Project Aware, that there's been a number of needs assessment tools that have already been using that are research and validated. So we're not going to reinvent the wheel, see what we can do to tap into possibly some of these tools that we can implement here in our district that are research validated and not just creating questions, right? But that there's some rigor behind that. So again, we're in the discovery part of that, but we think there's some real good possibilities.
Fantastic. And those were my questions. Jake, you had another question?
It's not a question, I guess, but on the note of gathering data and on a similar point that Mr. Schneider made, I'm sure it's crossed your mind already, but I hope that you involve students, especially at the high school level where kids are capable of articulating how they feel the system helps and doesn't help. And you mentioned 70% of kids feel like they don't receive the support that they should. So I guess it would be less a recommendation and also a thank you in advance for including kids in this data gathering process, because like you said, rather than just raising questions, they would be an excellent way to look at potential solutions and identify articulately what problems exactly the students face.
Thank you. You're very much an important voice for a very important reason why we're doing this work. So thank you for that.
Are there any more questions and comments from the board? That being said, thank you for the first step in a 3-year discovery of what we can do to be better, as we always do in everything we do in this district, but to really address this unknown area of mental health and the impact in education. So thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate the time you gave us. We're moving on to item number 8, which is the quarterly curriculum report, which is a review of physical education and health, mathematics, science, and language arts. And we're going to spearhead it with Dr. Mark McLaughlin, and if you could introduce the administrators and educators who have joined us, a cast of thousands, but a lot of information to cover, and we look forward to hearing it all.
Thank you very much. Well, while I do that, I would invite the phys ed group, who are first to present tonight, to set up their work at the table. And while they're doing that, I will just say by general introduction, we're really pleased to have the opportunity to present the first of the quarterly reports of curriculum to the board tonight. The opportunity is always welcome to share with the board and our public all the work that happens throughout the course of the year as we collaborate to work on programming that has a direct impact on students and teachers. One theme that I'd like to just sort of stress tonight is that what you're going to hear is a lot about collaboration and a lot about K-12 work, and that is a hallmark of the way that we approach our work in Merrimack. And this group before you, but others that will speak tonight, are also variations on that theme. This is really a district that prides on having all the voices at the table. You know, our students are with our teachers are with students for the year that they teach, but our students go through a K through 12 process. And so the more that all of our educators are informed and work with each other about the life of a student K through 12, the better off our students are. And just by way of introduction, I'd say that I'm also delighted and grateful to all of our educators tonight for being here. I could just be the only voice you hear for the next hour, and really how fun would that be? So it's more important to hear from the people who actually do this great work, and so I invited them, and I'm so grateful that they're here tonight. So I'm going to ask Adam Carragher, who's the chair of the Phys Ed and Health Committee, to introduce the team that's here tonight, and then they will begin with their presentation. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. So I am Adam Carragher. I'm the principal over at Merrimack Middle School, and I'm just going to go ahead and have the staff just introduce themselves as they go through.
Hi, I'm Rick Erda. I work at Merrimack High School.
Hi, Amy Larkin Perez. I'm the Health and PE Department Chair at the high school.
Linda Murgo, health teachers at Merrimack Middle School. Aggie Cotto, I'm a health teacher at Merrimack Middle School.
Hi, I'm Rick Grenier. I'm the phys ed teacher at the upper elementary.
And Sean Crotto, elementary teacher at James Mastercole Elementary School.
Jen Partham, PE teacher at Thorntons Ferry.
So we started our work on our PE and health curriculum in June of 2014. We met briefly and then continued our work all of last school year and have begun and continued that work, I should say, into this school year. Since that time, we've really learned a lot about what it is, the PE and the health curriculum, as a K-12 practice within the Merrimack School District. So my colleagues are going to describe a little bit more about what we have learned. But first, I think it's important to take a moment and think a little bit about the curriculum that we currently have. So the last time our PE and health curriculum was revised was in 1990. The health curriculum was last revised in 1997. So we put a chart up there, and the chart actually shows the obesity rate since the 1990, then the 2000, and then the 2010. And you can see that in many ways the demographic has changed just over the last 25 years. So I guess ultimately it points a lot to that need to revise and revisit what we have as our practices in our PE and our health curriculum in the Merrimack School District. So that's 2010. That's the last one up there. 2015, who knows what that would look like in 2020. Well, we hope we will start to continue to make a difference in the lives of all the kids. So I'm going to pass it over to Amy over here.
Okay, so our first thing is our big idea. In creating our curriculum, we're using the UBD model, Understanding by Design, and we basically adopted the goal from SHAPE, formerly known as AFERD. SHAPE stands for the Society of Health and Physical Educators. So our goal is to develop a physically literate individual who has the knowledge, skills, and competence to enjoy a lifetime of healthful physical activity. And really, it's amazing to me to sit here because the previous two presentations is a perfect segue for what we're doing as educators in our district. And our next slide reinforces that. We included this slide just to give you a visual of how our society has changed over the years. 50 plus years ago, we were living a much more active lifestyle simply because we were engaging in more laborious jobs, for example, such as farmers. And over time, our careers have changed and we live a more sedentary lifestyle, and as a result of that, and as we saw earlier, our healthcare costs have increased greatly. So we look at our job to really sell wellness and movement, and when the kids leave our program, we want them to really have a great experience, love movement, appreciate movement, so they can go on and become healthy, active adults.
So before you were saying, Mr. Powell, that you liked the different types of learning. So if any of you get up and move around and you're a kinesthetic learner, we will not judge you for doing some jumping jacks. So this slide shows the roadmap which represents the grade levels at which physical skills and knowledge should be introduced, practiced, and as well as when the competency and application should occur. This helps when we meet as our district K-12 PE and health team, and as we are designing and implementing our curriculum, which leads to student attainment, and so that our students will be able to be college and career ready to lead a healthy lifestyle. So you can see how it travels from the elementary school to middle school, high school, and then to college and career ready. Now, something that the shift of physical education has gone from how many times can you make a basket, in 1 minute, versus now what it is where we're trying to teach a lifelong healthy lifestyle. So our focus is now on lifelong fitness. So as our curriculum is going through, we're going through, as Amy was saying, the national standards. And on one of the handouts that we pass out to you, the first page is the national standards. There are 5 updated ones. They were just updated last year. So that's what we're using as a guideline. The New Hampshire State PE guidelines or PE standards are not reflecting of the updated ones, so we are moving forward so that we can be one of the leading schools in our PE curriculum. The second and third page in that packet is the scope and sequence, and as you can see, the first standard, for the audience, the first standard is all about skills, and locomotor skills and manipulative skills, and that is the standard that we are currently working on, and you can see how lengthy that standard is. And then we've already finished on the second page another standard, and we will be continuing to work on the other standards as well. So, and for the mental health group, we do have standards 4 and 5, which focus more on teamwork and sportsmanship. So there you go. And so we've also, as a team, have been working on our health curriculum. So Linda and Maggie from the middle school are here to talk about that.
So for health education, our big idea is that we study health to acquire the knowledge and skills to make smart, safe, and healthy decisions that reduce risk-taking behavior and promotes overall well-being.
When we were given the task of looking at developing a new health curriculum, we first went to what was in place already, which is the New Hampshire Health Curriculum Frameworks. And from this, we were able to get the content, what's most important things for our students to be able to know. Some examples would be alcohol and other drugs, addiction, mental health issues, interpersonal communication. Embedded in that document is the 8 New Hampshire health standards, and these are the skills. What are the things that we want our students to be able to do? And this would be things like accessing valid information, being able to analyze influences. Our big one, of course, is making decisions, goal setting, and advocacy for their self, for their own health, family, and in the community. We are heavily involved in writing the units, and we're using the Understanding by Design template that Mark shared with us last year. the three essential questions. What is the enduring and understanding? What is the enduring understanding that we want students to know or be able to do, and how can it be used beyond the classroom? How can they use their refusal skills? How can they, in their own careers or life, use the decision-making model to solve problems? What evidence is needed to demonstrate mastery of what we want students to know and be able to do, and we're focusing more project-oriented on that. And what are the learning activities that are needed?
So from August Academy, we also were looking into the why of what we do, particularly at the real-world situations and much of what was mentioned earlier. Having students be more aware of things like anxiety, mental health issues, managing stress, applying these to real-world situations, refusal skills, awareness, like Linda said, of alcohol, inhalants, other drugs, standing up to peer pressure, and then lastly, focusing all units go back to the decision-making model and what can they do, what choices do they have, and what's the best decision for them.
So where do we go from here? Ultimately, obviously, a lot of the work is yet to be done. A lot of work is still in front of us. The PE department, we plan on continuing to revise and utilize those SHAPE standards to help us leverage what we believe to be good, solid practices, a good, solid curriculum, and ultimately continue using that as a guide for us as we revise our curriculum. We also want to increase our collaborative time that we have between particularly the high school and the middle school health department as they continue to utilize the state frameworks that are available and the Understanding by Design template to guide their work. So at this time, we'd like to entertain any questions you might have.
Do you have any questions from the board? Jake?
So a question, I guess, more so to the gym teachers, phys ed teachers. You talk about trying to, forget the way you phrased it, it was probably a lot better than I'm about to do, but getting kids to enjoy an active, healthy lifestyle for well into the future. But I know that a lot of kids are reluctant in gym, like maybe it's not as big an issue in the elementary schools, but I definitely know as they get older, a lot of kids don't love gym very much. And as a result, you get a lot of, you see teachers trying to balance keeping kids healthy and like making them do laps, et cetera, which I don't necessarily, I think that's a good thing. But how do you balance trying to inspire kids to want to go and do this for the rest of their life and getting them to do the bare minimum even if they're reluctant to do so? Like, is that an issue that you face?
Well, I'll speak on behalf of that. I always give this example in our classes. I always say, you know, one of the biggest challenges I think in PE that we have is everyone can see your weaknesses. For example, in math, if you don't understand something or you don't understand the lesson, you can hide it on your paper and people don't have to see maybe you didn't get a good grade on something because it's on a piece of paper. Whereas in PE, if you have a weakness, everyone can see it. So we really just try and articulate that to the kids and let them know. It's kind of cliche, I guess, but it's a judgment-free zone. We really try and make it an environment where kids feel safe and welcome, and we just have them focus on their own wellness. It's not about your old school PE, what you see on the TV, on movies and TV anymore. It's not like that at all anymore. It's about a good experience and welcoming everyone and not criticizing them for not being able to do something. We provide modifications for students so they can have some success while doing something like a push-up, for example. So they feel the success and they can see their own improvements throughout the semester. And we give them pre-goals and post-goals so they can see a change, if not maintain their health and wellness, improve their health and wellness so they can see a personal change and make it more personal. I don't know if that answers your question. Or well enough. But
Another thing that we do with the lifelong fitness is we want the students to be able to, when they're an adult, do a pickup game of basketball or play a volleyball game at a barbecue. And they don't necessarily have to know exactly, or, the entire list of rules and which way you're supposed to rotate, and can you, do a proper set for a spike. We just want them to be able to get out there and be active as adults. And if they feel comfortable, hopefully throughout the Merrimack School District, that would be a goal of ours, is to have the students be able to choose fun physical activities as an adult so that they can continue to be healthy.
Shannon, can I just?
Mark?
So I appreciate that question, and I just want to elaborate. One thing among many that I'm so grateful for the board allowing this opportunity is for this team and all the teams to be able to talk about. We make a joke sometimes around the table. This isn't your grandmother's phys ed class. This isn't your grandmother's science class. I mean, things are different now, and we talked about what are things that the community and maybe even the board might know at the end of this presentation that they might not have known before. And one is that the physical education and health curriculums follow standards. And those standards relate to, as was described by the educators, lifelong learning. They're not just ideas to get people up and running. There's meaning and design behind them. And if we think about the August Academy, where the challenge was to get our educators to continue to think about inquiry, think about ways that they would, continue to embrace the challenge of thinking a little differently and doing things a little differently. If different is better, different isn't always better, but if different is better, what might those things be? But an equal challenge is to students. There's a tendency, I think, sometimes for students to and I've got two at home, so I can say, kind of sit back and say, okay, teacher, impress me. And I think that there's a challenge, too, to students to ask themselves, though I might not love athletics, which is a perfectly acceptable thing to feel or to say, but what might a reason be for me to engage that's beyond what I think I know? And that would be a challenge to students as well. Both as an intellectual challenge, but also as just an engagement challenge. So I would just say that part of the answer to the question is that, yes, it's incumbent on teachers to continue to think of ways to be creative and innovative in their practice, which I think by nature our teachers do, and this process really drives that, and to encourage students to be equally invested in trying to figure out how can I make this make meaning for me. And that's integral to all the things that we're trying to do in district. But it's not just, it's a partnership. And so everything we're trying to do is about a partnership. So it continues to evolve. But I think it's just an important piece of the larger picture that we're trying to promote in our district.
And I think to play off Jake's earlier question, I think being he is the front lines of our school body. He mentioned earlier with the mental health presentation to be able to talk to kids who can articulate their experience, and maybe when you talk about kids that don't feel comfortable in that PE environment, finding kids that maybe what you would call change makers, facilitators, people that could help to facilitate a conversation about how could we make them more comfortable if they are uncomfortable. Because I'm getting a sense, Jake, that kids who might feel uncomfortable still in PE in high school. Because you're there. So I'm assuming, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, stop me. But, is there a way of including students in the study of how to get them to give their all in PE when it may not be, when you're on the same class with, say, the quarterback of the football team who can, run laps around you all day. So how do you make it, comfortable for all, even though they're not going to be the standout? I guess, is that the right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and also as far as I'm in adventure sports right now with Mr. Drone, and everyone loves doing like the trust falls and climbing the ropes course, but then on Mondays and Wednesdays we do workout day, where that obviously isn't everyone's favorite day of the week. So you guys and Dr. McLaughlin, they did a really good job of answering the question, because I was just wondering how you balance the required stuff that you kind of have to do in a gym class, and then the effort to inspire kids to want to do gym if they don't really want to do it as it stands right now.
Right, and we just hope you understand the why behind everything. I think that's our main goal, is we want you to understand why you're doing it, so when you do become an adult and you're not made to do something, you want to do it because you realize it benefits your health and wellness and it enhances your life.
Are there any other questions of PE and health? Jacinda?
I guess just a thought that I have. When we talk about curriculum, a lot of times we talk about, I would say in more recent times, of the kind of a cross-pollination between subjects, whether it's art and history and things like that, and we see that popping up more and more. Are there examples in the curriculum where the health is popping up in other areas and other disciplines? Does that make sense?
Well, for one thing, I would definitely, I guess I would definitely say is that the health and the PE are so strongly connected. One of the reasons that we're doing the curriculums together is because of that obvious linkage. It's not enough just to exercise. It's also about making healthy and appropriate choices and decisions, which I know Health discussed a lot about there. I don't know. Would you like to add?
Well, I can add that the health and PE can also combine. I know we do with stress management. We also practice yoga. We do journal writing. There are multiple things that we do because hopefully someone enjoys one of those for stress management. We also look at the cost of nicotine products and how much money would you save in a year if you used X amount of products. So examples of things that cross over.
I wonder if one of the elementary folks particularly could talk about I&E. I'm thinking of Bob Jadari, who's the phys ed teacher at Reed's Ferry, and but I know that you all do it. But I'm thinking of when Bob was doing a literacy lesson on reading labels. Want to just say a little bit about that?
Sure. So we have a few different curriculum integration classes that we teach at the elementary level and the upper elementary level now. And so one of them is literally called the curriculum integration, activity. And we do a lot of health integration. And one thing that we do across the elementary CIAs is learning about heart rate and percentages and falling in a target range. And so we're able to use math concepts as well as health and PE concepts in those classes. We're able to use you reading the food labels and seeing the percentage of sodium that a bag of chips has compared to how much you're supposed to have in the entire day. And we're able to use those classes to really take what we're trying to teach in PE and then show them in ways that they can use it in their classroom curriculums as well.
And so that's math content, and also it relates to larger things that we talk about. Like I frequently report to the board about our need as related to in different data points that we've seen over time about the need to enhance students' inquiry and students' analytical skills across the board. Well, so in a lesson like that, a young student is able to engage in critical reading, but analysis that not only supports let's say, the reading and the literacy components of instruction, but also because phys ed is important too. And so how does that help a student to better understand his or her choices when it comes to selecting things to put in their body, which is precisely what these folks try to do. So it's not just phys ed in the service of everybody else. It's likewise sometimes other curriculums in the service of phys ed and health. So those are just some examples, and I think as we continue to develop this, we'll see even more cross-curricular opportunities that will be explored and implemented, by this great team.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board and the administration? I think we're on to our next subject area. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I keep turning that off. So I would invite the math curriculum team if they would want to come up next. And I'm going to ask Marcia McGill to introduce the team. This, likewise, is a K-12 group of folks who have really been engaged in a wonderful extended discussion about curriculum development, resource development, K-12. And like the Mental Health Committee discussed, they have developed really a multi-year action plan that will help speak to the ideas that we have moving forward. So I invite Marcia to introduce her team.
Thank you. To the board, I'd like to say thank you for inviting the District Math Committee to your meeting this evening to present. Members of the District Math Committee that are with us this evening, from Merrimack High School, we have Rhonda Lude. From Merrimack Middle School, we have Shauna D. Moore and Adam Carragher. From the Upper Elementary School, Helen Fitzgerald, William Morris, and myself, Marcia McGill. From Mastrocola Elementary, Michelle Romaine. From Thornton's Ferry, Julie DeLuca, and Reed's Ferry, Nick Kohler. Math Committee members that were unable to be with us this evening are Nancy Romero from Mastrocola Elementary, Cheryl Smith and Jill Smith from Mastrocola Middle School, Sherry Rosswag and Kimberly Yarlott from Reed's Ferry School, and Laura Antonucci from Thornton's Ferry School. The last time the board was updated on math was approximately 2 years ago, when several committee members joined you to talk about standards-based instruction. Prior to that presentation, work was being done with grade level expectations and grade span expectations. Since that time, educators across the district have been transitioning from these expectations to standards for college and career readiness. And this has been done at every level. So at the high school level,
high school continues to work on competencies and aligning the math offerings at MHS to the standards for college and career readiness. We've begun redesigning scope and sequences to better align with these standards. We've been reinforcing the needs for students to explain their reasoning in their everyday classes. And we've also begun to design new interdisciplinary courses, including Mission to Mars and Language, Truth, and Logic. At the middle school?
At the middle school, our work has continued, known as SCALES, which stands for Strategies for Collaboration and Learning of Essential Standards. The math group has worked particularly in regards to realigning the pre-algebra curriculum and the 7th grade standard curriculum to reflect the college and career readiness standards. They have refined multiple different common formative assessments in order to also align themselves and be more reflective of the curriculum that they are realigning. There has been a change in the scope and sequence of the pre-algebra program, and there's also been the pilot of a universal assessment tool in the math Title I program. At the elementary level,
at the elementary level, educators have been working on the math framework of instruction, a curriculum crosswalk with the standards, math fact fluency, as well as writing to explain math thinking. Educators have added problem-solving strategies to enhance their math instruction, and many elementary educators also participated in Intel math training to deepen their own math understanding. Greg Tang, a national renowned speaker, was featured at one of our August academies, and he highlighted the importance of math problem solving. Finally, as we become more familiar with the K-12 standards of mathematical practices, we implemented the STAR Math Assessment to give us data to improve our own math instruction.
Tonight, we are also excited to share with you how we are collaborating pre-K through 12th grade to deepen student understanding of math in a unified manner across our district. The first step in this process was to reconvene the District Math Committee. This committee consists of pre-K through 12 educators, math facilitators, and administrators. The vision for the committee is aligned with the district logic model impact of students demonstrating growth in math achievement. We have created a 3-year action plan consisting of 4 major focus areas. The first of these areas is to increase overall knowledge of the pedagogy of teaching and instructional practices as they relate to the college and career readiness standards and the standards for mathematical practices. Our second focus is to increase collaboration among educators pre-K to 12 to ensure Merrimack students are provided with a continuum of learning in the area of mathematics. The next focus of our committee is to review the Merrimack School District K to 12 mathematics curriculum and its alignment to the standards for college and career readiness. And our final focus of the next 3 years is to explore and identify research-based math resources to be used in the delivery of instruction in Merrimack.
Lastly, we want to highlight some of the focus strategies that are a part of the first year of the 3-year math plan that Michelle referred to. The first focus will be placed on developing a greater understanding and deeper working knowledge of the 8 standards for mathematical practice. You may remember some of those: making sense of problems and persevering in solving them, constructing viable arguments and critiquing and reasoning of others' arguments, modeling with mathematics. These are fundamental to our students' higher order thinking and complex problem-solving skills. These overarching standards really provide a basis for common practices and language as our students move from pre-K, kindergarten, through high school and the 12th grade. Initially, that will start with a book study group at each of the 3 levels, where educators will do a book study together, and then followed by that collaboration days where they will work across the grade levels and share their experiences in an effort to gain common understanding and common language across the 3 grade levels. Also, in addition to looking at and exploring research-based math resources, elementary level educators will begin the process of unpacking standards, as well as developing a better understanding of the key concepts, skills, learning goals, and developing assessments for those. So that's the first year of the plan, and I'll turn it back over to Marcia.
I guess at this time we'd like to thank you for inviting us to speak at the board and share the work we've been doing in the area of mathematics, K-12. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them for you at this time.
Any questions from the board? We have Andy.
So it sounds like you're in year 1 of a 3-year journey. So it looks as though, based on the way that you laid it out, that it's when you hit maybe the end of year 2 and into year 3 is when you look at what adjustments you think you're going to need to make to the curriculum in Merrimack based on, the new standards that are coming up, the common assessments and other things. Is that sort of the timeline, and what process do you envision using to look at what adjustments you need to make, what sources you may go to, and things like that?
Well, I think we're going to start here in year 1 with sort of that exploration and looking, what do we have, what do we currently use, what's out there, what is the alignment of our existing math curriculum that we have right now to the standards, and looking for that and doing any revision to that. And we've looked at it and we've decided that it would be a 3-year process to go through that work that we would need to do and to roll it out with K-12 staff or pre-K through 12 staff.
And one of the things, so when we talked about curriculum liaisons earlier on, I said one of the roles of the board is to let you folks do your work, the knowledgeable folks, but have us support you is what you need. And I know many times when you decide that you're going to change a curriculum or make a change, it involves cost. Whether it's textbooks, whether it's other materials, whether it's training, all the different dimensions to that. So, as you go through this process, when you reach a point where you start looking at funding that you need when we go into budget seasons, I want you to be proactive in coming to us and not explaining exactly what it is you're going to do, but the areas where you need some financial assistance to help through the process, because when you come at the end of the 3 years, we'd like you to not only have a plan that you're going to be successful in, but also to make sure that we've given you the resources along the way to uncover and investigate what you need to do. So I'd like to remind that part.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the math? Comments? From administration, you're good. I would absolutely say that math is one of those areas where there's always a lot of, I think analysis from our parents and the community at large. We do get a lot of questions on what we're using, how we're using it, what it does for college readiness and career readiness. So, having that constant eye, I think, is something that's valuable. What I also think is valuable is that you're here telling us on a regular basis what you're doing and how there's always that eye on how we can implement any program better. So this is enlightening, it's informative, but not just for us, although we do need to know this stuff, especially during budget season, but just for the parents and the community at large that does have an eye on this as a very important part of the future of the health of Merrimack education. Now, I did have kind of a put you on the spot for Mr. DeLude. With all the numbers that Health Trust was saying, did you have the answer before they told us with all the... That was like the biggest word problem ever.
I was too worried about having to speak in public.
But that could be like a final exam right there, I think. So that was, I'm thinking Mr. DeLude's got to be loving these numbers. The one thing I also have to say is the August Academy came up in our last presentation, but here I'm definitely still seeing that the why of everything we're doing is coming up, and it came through in your presentation, even when you're not naming August Academy by name this year. But is that something that I think was happening before August Academy really shone a light on the why of things, or do you think that it gave you a new perspective on how to address the math curriculum as a project?
Well, I think it's definitely added to the work that we do. I think we've always looked at kind of the why and the how, but I think it really emphasized it for us and is really making us keep a closer eye on that and looking at the work we do a little bit more critically and making sure we're always thinking about inquiry and what's the why and what's the how, and making sure that we're getting that message across to children and getting them excited about asking the how and the why.
Excellent. Absolutely.
So I just wanted to really extend my thanks to this group and say that one of the things, it's a hallmark of all the group, I hope you're seeing a pattern, which is that there's a lot of purposeful work that all of our educators and administrators do every day. And this group, particularly also, has been very deliberative. There's a lot about math that's complicated. And I think there might be a tendency to say, well, it's not that complicated, just do this or just do that. But it is complicated. And one of the things that complicates it is the fact that we have really kind of dual goals. One is to prepare students for facts and knowledge, and another kind of imperative is to make sure that they know what to do once they know those things, and they know how to apply. And that is not as simple as one might think, and there aren't obvious resources that can be used to achieve that. So what's been so helpful about this group and how they've really contributed to deep thinking is that they've been thinking about both those things, and putting together a plan like this is allowing us to be very purposeful, to name the phenomena of the things that we're trying to address, to name the problem first. By problem, I mean challenge. And to name it, and then to systematically go about trying to address it. And so that when we come with a plan that may have a budget implication in the future, it will be the result of all that purposeful, planful work, rather than just rushing to a conclusion that may be part of the problem, but not the fullness of the problem. And we're really trying to be about the fullness of it. So I just, all of our curriculum groups do that in this group, particularly because math is a challenging concept to discuss and to weed through, and there's lots to it. So I just wanted to say thank you to this group for their consistent work in leading that charge.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time again, and we look forward to next quarter.
So now Mr. Morris is going to move to a different chair. And as he does that, I will invite the science group to present to you tonight. And this is a group that should be familiar to a number of you because they have come before you over a period of the last couple of years. I think they have set the standard for communication as well about curriculum work. in the way that they have communicated with our leadership team and also our board. And so they're here tonight they're in a slightly different place than the math group that is, kind of, in a beginning stage as a committee, but not in terms of work that we've done. But this group has been in place for a while. So I'd ask Bill to introduce his folks and acknowledge even the folks who can't be here tonight but are represented in comments.
Thank you for having us. We look so forward to coming each year for the update. It's almost like spending some time with some old friends. And so with us tonight, we have Allison McGuire from Reed's Ferry, Rebecca Vandenberg from Thornton's Ferry, Ashley Meehan from James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, Jeff Karen from Merrimack Middle School, Keith Tanner from James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, and Joan McMahon from Merrimack Middle School. And I want to give us some due because for the first hour we had Jamie Cadero with us, but she needed to leave. And so just give us some due here. And then not with us tonight, but certainly a very valuable member of our team is Pat Scott, who is our high school representative. The Science Curriculum Committee continues to meet bi-monthly during the 2015-16 school year to work on continuing to revise the Merrimack Science Curriculum. In addition, we met for 3 full days this past summer. During this draft phase, the Science Curriculum Review Committee has been focusing on ensuring rigor across all grade levels and across all 3 strands: life, physical, and earth space. The committee also reviewed the trajectory across all strands to ensure common language. We continue to feel that implementation of this revised curriculum, I think because we knew we had a question coming from Andy, should be supported by our current budget levels. The committee continues to follow current trends in science education at the state and national level and how they could affect our curriculum. We feel confident that the curriculum we are creating can absorb any of these trends. And now members of the committee will share some more specifics about this past year's work.
I just added a note. I know there was a question earlier about wellness and just how it connects to other curriculums. So just for an example in science, the 4th grade does it.
Oh, there it is. Earlier, it was asked about other curriculums and how wellness is integrated in other curriculum areas, and so immediately our team kind of looked at each other. So I just wrote down something as an example. At the 4th grade level, there's an extensive human body unit that's taught, and students are taught about bones, muscles, and organs, but an added piece that we've really highlighted in the new curriculum, it was there before, but we've added pieces to it, is more of the wellness and how activity and nutrition are components to a healthy lifestyle. Fit Kids is also a program that comes in to support that wellness as well, and then that education continues up into the 5th and 6th grade level. So I just wanted to make that note that there's definitely areas for integration, and where science, especially at the elementary level, is integrated into reading, writing, and math. There's definitely a connection there across the levels for wellness. In terms of our committee work this year, the bulk of our year last year, we spent a lot of time looking at rigor and an appropriate balance of rigor, especially at the K to 6 level, as that's what our drafts we've currently done. We looked at each strand, and to do this, we took a giant table over the summer and laid out all of our work because we felt we kept looking at things in isolation, and we really wanted to get an idea of the entire document. So we laid it out K to 6 side by side, and we looked at it across a grade level and then across a strand and highlighted all the performance indicator terms that range from recall to generate.
So in this work that we did, our goal was to ensure rigor at each grade level.
without having any particular grade level overburdened. So when we discussed talking about the performance indicator terms, we made sure that we balanced the basics as recall or identify with those more challenging terms like research and generate. The committee has continued to make this a fluid process by collecting feedback from the teachers. So we continue to elicit feedback from teachers throughout the entire process.
At the middle school, the 7th and 8th grade science teachers have already developed unit templates and common assessments for the enduring understandings with the life science strand being covered in 7th grade and the earth space science strand covered in 8th grade. That's the scales work that Mr. Carragher mentioned in the last presentation. So this year, this committee's focus is going to be to take that work that the middle school teachers have done and develop curriculum documents for the 7th and 8th grade that are going to be consistent with the format that we've already generated for the K to 6 documents.
I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the high school. I was given some information about what they're doing. At the high school, during December collaboration days, they'll be using the science department to continue to integrate the work of the science committee that has occurred in the district to date. Close attention in particular is what is going to be done at what is being done at the middle school to bring that up to the high school level. The science department will continue to review their competencies and the content of our developing curriculum. The high school science teachers have been reflective about the competencies. The teachers within each discipline are always analyzing and adjusting their assessments to be sure that they are accurately and fairly assessing the students over the year.
I'm also going to help out a little bit with the high school as well. The high school continues to play an important role in the development of our K through 12 science curriculum. The work of competency development and implementation at the high school will continue to evolve into the format of the K through 12 District Science Committee. The high school curriculum will continue to be refined in light of the changes in focus at the elementary level to achieve a more seamless and integrated district science curriculum. Consistent with the processes we've used all along, the documents created by the middle and high school teachers this year will be vetted by the District Science Curriculum Committee for inclusion in our curriculum draft.
And I want to thank you on behalf of the teachers and students for providing us the opportunity to share with you again about our work with this science curriculum.
Are there questions from the board? Andy Schneider gets first crack, right? Jake?
So the other week in the mail, I got my kneecap scores back from junior year, which is the science assessment. And the one thing that I noticed that many of my friends shared is there's, I don't want to say that it's lacking, but there's definitely, with the earth and space science, it's definitely underemphasized compared to everything else. And part of that may just be the gap of time between when we learn it and when we take the test. But largely, as I've noticed as a student, the track pushes you from physical science to biology, which is mostly focused on molecular and cellular biology, and then into chemistry and physics, and then you're done. So I feel like, or not I feel like, I was wondering if you guys are looking in ways to either make a stronger foundation in or emphasize the study of macrobiology. I don't know if that's an actual term, or as well as earth and space science, which are present and big chunks of standardized tests, but not as emphasized as the other branches of science in our curriculum.
So Jacob, one of the things that we have done as a committee is we have thoughtfully ensured that all three strands of science are in each grade level. This was something that we noticed was not present before we began our work the last few years, but we have gone. So at the K through 6 level, there will not be any gaps. Every year there'll be some of all three strands.
Yeah, I'm sure things have changed behind me because now I'm a senior in high school, but as it stands for my class, I don't think I've learned about the human body since 5th or 6th grade with Mrs. Garber. So that's definitely something that doesn't come up anymore. So you may have changed that behind me, and if you have, I'm pleased to hear it, but I just wanted to address that concern.
Thank you.
Is that it, Jake, for you? Any other questions from the board? Administration?
I just would say I tease Bill and then through him the team. I think that they should and will someday write a book about how to do curriculum development, and I'm kind of not kidding. Because I think they have set it. No, I'm serious. They've set a standard for how it is to work across contents and not across grades rather, and how to be informed by each other in a way that just is not typical. It's not how curriculums, typically get developed. It's silos, and this team has really set a standard, I think, for how that work is to be done. And the result is careful, as Rebecca and others have said, is careful analysis. I mean, the willingness of this team to put forth everything they've done on a big table and to look to see where, that's a risk because you might find out gaps, and then all the work you've done, you might say, oh, geez. But this is a group willing to do that because what's better for kids is to not have as many gaps. And so I just really applaud this group and really do think that there's a book there. And when it gets published, I'll let you know how to buy it. So there's the challenge. That's the truth. Thank you.
There are no other questions. We want to thank you so much for your time. And I think there was a hint that he wanted you to be published very soon with this because it makes us look really good. We know you're doing the work. We just want everyone to know you're doing the work. So, but we do thank you for your time. We know we don't have a lot of questions because you've been here recently, but it's good to have that refresher with all the other subject areas. So thank you for that recap, and we look forward to the next quarter. So thank you.
And then last, but certainly not least, I invite our stalwart language arts coordinators, elementary language arts coordinators to the table. And while they are setting up, I will, and in a minute, ask them to identify themselves. I would say to you that Sydney Conti, who is the language arts coordinator from Thorntons Ferry School, is an integral part of this team. Just schedule wouldn't allow her to be here tonight, but imagine Sydney sitting there because she is central to everything that happens with this group. You could Skype her, and she's just not available tonight. But yeah, just imagine Sydney. And before you begin, if you just want to identify yourselves, you're well known to the board, but it's worth saying again.
Well, thank you for having us here this evening. I'm Diane Macon, the reading specialist language arts coordinator at Reeds Ferry. And I'd like to introduce you to our newest member of the team. This is Sarah Croto, and she's taking over the position at Mastrocola Elementary School. She was a classroom teacher at Thorntons Ferry for many years, so she's a familiar face in the district. And with us also is Nikki Rowe from the upper elementary school. And it is unfortunate that Sydney can't be here, but we'll think of her all. So as you know, because we've been here before, that we've been a part of a multi-year comprehensive initiative to raise student achievement in reading and writing. And in our previous presentations, we've described to you our standards-based work in reading. And you've actually heard about and witnessed firsthand the successes that we've had with our comprehensive writing curriculum. But our work is ever evolving. And so this summer, we convened a group of district educators to delve deeper into the English language arts standards. We spent time analyzing the language standards, which relate to vocabulary acquisition, grammar, and the conventions of writing. We also examined the foundational skills that relate to print concepts for emergent readers, phonics, and spelling. And not only were we interested in what students needed to learn, but we explored ways to teach the standards in authentic ways, always applying their learning in authentic reading and writing experiences. So Nikki is going to talk for a few minutes about our work specifically with the language standards that we looked at.
Thank you, Diane.
So research over the past several decades has shown that students really learn the English language arts standards when they're done in context. And so what that means is that we're teaching them within reading and writing. And so Diane talked a little bit about the summer work, and I'd like to just tell you a little bit more about the work that we did to help improve our ever-evolving and I think have to say always improving literacy and the work that we do in Merrimack. This summer, kindergarten through 6th grade teachers, the language arts coordinators, and the elementary administrators worked for about a week to sit down and to talk about the different types of tools and documents and resources that we could use to give kids authentic experiences with the English language arts standards. And what I mean by that is giving them an opportunity to learn these standards in the context of reading and writing. And so I'd like to share with you a little bit about what that looks like. So we do many different things throughout our day in our English language arts block. We have word work, and we have reading, independent reading. We have conferring with teachers. We have mini lessons. We have one-on-one lessons. We have small group lessons, and of course we have some whole group lessons too. And so you take all of these different things that we do, and we have opportunities to enhance what we do with language arts within all of these blocks, within the whole literacy block. And so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what each one of these means and tell you how this relates to the work that we're doing and that we're encouraging our teachers to do with our students. So conferring. Conferring during independent reading and writing. What this means is that we meet one-on-one with students or in a very small group of students, and we talk about what their goals are and what they're working on. So in writing, we might look at a piece of student writing, and we might talk about different goals that that child has, whether it's looking at describing words or strong leads or exploding a moment, which is about taking a very small moment in time and really adding a lot of depth to it. We usually leave our students with a goal during this session, and then we check in with them. And we'd like to check in with them at least once or twice a week one-on-one, but oftentimes we get an opportunity to check in with them more times as we're walking around the classroom or as they're talking with a peer about what they're doing. Another opportunity that we have to integrate the language standards is during our mini lessons. A mini lesson is a 10 to 15 minute period where we gather our students, and based on the data that we've collected, like when we're conferring with our students, we're figuring out what students really need to work on, we develop a lesson to address those points. And then we ask our students to go back to their reading or their writing and apply that. So I used describing words previously. So let's say that I've been walking around conferring with students, and I'm noticing that they're using weak adjectives. Rather than giving them a worksheet on adjectives and saying, fill in the adjective, we'll talk about what a describing word is, what an adjective is, and then we'll send them back to their writing and say, look at some of your own writing. Where can you enhance your writing? How can you change the adjectives or your describing words to make them more interesting? Another thing that we do with our students is called a mid-lesson teaching point, and this works seamlessly within the units of study that we use for writing. What happens in this teaching period is our students will be writing, and as the teacher is walking around and supporting her students or his students, they'll notice again some trends. They'll stop the students after they've been doing some independent writing and say, remember, earlier today we talked about describing words. Take a look at the work that you've just completed. Are you using strong adjectives? And so again, supporting those lessons and those ideas in a very relevant way. We've heard all through tonight the ideas of inquiry and the why, and this is another one of those opportunities to tell our kids, again, rather than saying, let's do worksheets and learn these skills, let's apply these because this is how you're going to become a better writer, and this is how you're going to use it in real life. We want our describing words or our adjectives to be strong words so that we can express how we feel and what we think and what something may look like or sound like or smell like. So again, we're giving them those opportunities to understand the why. Finally, another way that we will help to incorporate this work is within something that we call small group instruction, where we'll take 3 to 5 students and bring them together for either some intervention or for some enrichment. We've talked about using data to guide our instruction, and sometimes we find that students need an opportunity to remediate a certain lesson. Other students are really ready to extend that learning opportunity, and so we use a small group instructional period within our large literacy block to do that. We'll bring kids together and work on whatever their goals are, and then continue to enhance that work. So we're always trying to grow our practice and always trying to grow our students. And now Sarah's going to talk to you a little bit more about what we're doing with some extremely exciting stuff with word study.
So another piece, is this working? Can you hear me? Yes. So another piece that we worked on this summer, as we were looking more closely at the language standards, we were also looking at the foundational standards for reading. And those are really the standards that lie the groundwork for students as they're learning to read and learning to understand words and vocabulary. So word study is another area that teachers really have been working on growing in their classrooms. And they have been trying really hard to include word study as part of their literacy instruction using resources from the program Words Their Way. So a little bit about what word study is. Word study is an approach to teaching phonics, spelling, and vocabulary. And up on the PowerPoint here, there's an equation that kind of breaks it down for you. So what word study is actually phonics instruction plus vocabulary instruction plus spelling instruction, alongside with authentic reading and writing experiences, like Nikki just explained, equals word study. So it's a switch from a more traditional approach to just teaching spelling in isolation to really incorporating phonics, vocabulary, and spelling all together, and then reinforcing that within authentic reading and writing experiences for students. Word study really complements our literacy instruction by identifying where students are in their reading and writing development and differentiating their word study instruction to meet their needs. So another way that word study is different from a traditional approach to spelling is it actually looks at where students are in terms of their reading and writing development and matches their instruction to what they need to work on to help them move in that continuum of becoming stronger readers and writers. There's a chart that I'm just going to touch upon, but I'll also be giving you a handout that has this for you to take a closer look at. But this chart compares a more traditional approach to spelling to a word study approach, and it talks about some of the differences. So word study is different from traditional spelling because, first of all, it's differentiated to match students' level of reading and writing, like I had just explained. Word study is also not taught for memorization, but instead it incorporates a little more of that inquiry piece by teaching students to start to discover patterns and relationships between words, beginning, with the sounds and spelling patterns, but then going into relationships in more vocabulary. Word study is also taught in conjunction with students' reading and writing so that they can apply what they're learning about words and about vocabulary in the work they're doing in reading and writing. So the goal is to have it really closely related to what students are learning and what they're reading at their level of reading and also what they're incorporating into their own writing. So we did create a brochure that goes into a little more detail about word study and talks a little bit about Words Their Way specifically. And this brochure was shared with parents at the start of the year. It went home so that they could help support their child at home, since this approach is a little bit different to what people have done in the past. So we will give you copies of that so that you can have it for your information.
So in addition to the curriculum work we wanted to share with you this evening, we also are excited to share with you a new to the district tool that we feel is going to show great promise in measuring academic growth for all of our students in Merrimack. We have a new assessment tool called STAR 360, which has been published by Renaissance Learning. It's a computer-based assessment, and it can be administered in a whole class setting. so it's quick and easy and efficient in its administration. It provides teachers with quick, reliable data in the areas of early literacy, reading, and math, and teachers can use this data to plan instruction that's best suited to meet a student's individual needs. This year, we have purchased STAR 360 through our language arts accounts, and it has been administered, both the STAR reading assessment and the STAR math assessment has been administered to all students in grades 2 through 6. We plan to extend this to grade 1 at the mid-year assessment time, and also the middle school is currently engaged in a STAR pilot program where they're actually taking a smaller number of students and administering the assessment and see how it will work for them. So from this early screening that we've administered to all these children, we have already been able to create a variety of individual, class, and grade level reports. And the data from these reports has allowed us to identify students who need additional support in some area of reading or math. And it's also allowed us to pinpoint the specific areas that need strengthening. We're also excited because there's another feature to STAR called STAR Custom that allows teachers to create their very own assessments, or grade level teams to create their very own assessments, so that they can also monitor student growth in other ways. So if you want to go to the next slide, there were just a few key points that I just wanted to reiterate about STAR 360. So STAR 360 fulfills the need for a universal screening tool. We often talk about universal screening tools when we meet as an RTI team, a response to instruction team at the district level. We need to find assessments that are quick and easy to administer, that are going to give us valid and reliable data so that we can very quickly identify which children need support or which children need extensions, so that we can plan for their individual needs. So this is a universal screening tool. It's exactly what we've been looking for as a response in an RTI team. The tool is computer adapted, and you may have heard that term used when you learned about Smarter Balanced. Smarter Balanced is also computer adaptive. It means that as the children are being administered the 34 questions in the reading or the math test, the computer identifies whether the children are being successful with what's been administered or if they're struggling with what's been administered. And so the computer automatically adjusts the assessment so the children will feel more successful as they continue on. So it's a computer adaptive tool, and so it closely monitors Smarter Balanced, the state assessment. So we feel that's going to be really helpful for children. Again, it provides teachers with reliable and valid data so that teachers can differentiate instruction. And it allows teachers to create these formative assessments. We've created many formative assessments in the district and used them to determine which children are being successful with the different standards that we've been teaching. But we've always wondered, how reliable is that data because of the way we've created them? They're teacher-created assessments. The formative assessments that we can create through the STAR Custom program are reliable and valid. So you'll be hearing a lot more about STAR 360, and I think little tidbits of it were mentioned in some of the previous presentations, but we wanted to make sure that you knew that there's something afoot, and it's really helping us, and we're very excited about it. So that's the end of our presentation this evening, but if you have questions about anything we've shared, we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Let's see Davis's hand up. And Jake, you're next.
Oh, Jake can go first.
Oh, Jake, he's deferring to you, Jake, if you'd like to go first.
All right. It's kind of a lengthy thing, so you might regret that. But this is kind of outside the scope of what you were presenting on, but it has to do with the English and Language Arts curriculum. And I wanted to know if you were addressing an increase in grammar education, because you talk about phonics and spelling and vocabulary, but I feel that where I as a student have been shortchanged the most is in grammar. Like, I would say that it's a joke, but it's not really a joke. A lot of kids say, the ones taking Romance languages like Latin, Spanish, or French, say they've learned more English from Spanish than they have from English. And, like, I've never learned in an English class what an indirect or a direct object pronoun is. I've never learned that there were more than 3 tenses when there are actually 14. You don't learn about past participles. You don't learn about clauses, the different types of clauses. And I feel that that seriously weakened me and all of my friends and other students that I'm not friends with as writers and as English students. And I wanted to emphasize that I'm in AP Literature and Composition, and a majority of my class doesn't fully understand how to use the semicolon. And that's not, I say that because I think that that's one of the most shocking examples, and we've never been taught really how to use the semicolon or when to use punctuation and grammar, because a lot of times teachers have just told us, avoid using the semicolon. It's complex, and we've never really been taught the nuances to it. So while I do appreciate everything you presented, especially with the early learning in language arts, I was wondering if you've discussed this topic at all, because I feel like it's the biggest deficiency in our district language arts.
Wow, you're so perceptive. Boy, have we talked about it. It's really one of our focuses. We talk a lot about evolution, and we've been here presenting to the board for years about the work that we've done and that we continue to do in reading, and the work that we've done with working on writing. And as we get closer and closer to seeing more proficiency, we also start to look at the data in terms of what we're struggling with. And the area that we really want to focus on right now are the language standards, and that includes the grammar and the vocabulary, all of those ideas that you've talked about, the use of like the semicolon. And what we've done is we spent about a year looking at the research, the most relevant research. And what we've learned is that research over decades, almost over 100 years, has said that the way that students are successful with this is to be taught it in the context of reading and writing, which is what we talked about, but more specifically for it to be relevant. And what that means is that rather than, again, I talked about like worksheets, but rather than doing drills, here's a semicolon, here's how you use it, and practice it 50 times. What we're learning is that it's much more effective to work with students in whatever the context is that they're working on. And it could be in science or social studies, and you talked about like students doing the languages. That's all relevant work. And so at that point, students need to use those different punctuation, the different types of grammar rules, and we're trying to teach them those in ways that they can remember them. I heard PE talk a lot tonight about enduring understandings, and that's where we need to go with teaching those kinds of skills as well. We need to teach students how to use them not only for today, but for the rest of their lives. So that also means not only for this worksheet or for this paper, but for all of your writing, for everything that you do. And so right now, and really beginning this summer, we're starting to explore the best ways to provide some professional development for the teachers so that they can do this successfully. And it's quite an undertaking because it is something that we've identified that has been lacking, and it's something that we need to strengthen. And that's not just here in elementary school or in the Merrimack School District. Check out some blogs. Like, it's all over the world. We really need to work on this, and I commend you on that perception to be able to say, this is an area that I felt shortchanged in because we understand the necessity to help our students in this area. And so we began this with a small group. And it's one of our big focuses this year is how do we provide adequate professional development for teachers, adequate models, coaching, and opportunities to confer with language arts coordinators and with each other to do this successfully. And so that's one of our real big goals.
Right, thank you.
Sure.
And this has become so much more focused for us because of all the work we've been doing with writing. our writing instruction has strengthened incredibly over the last few years. And as we teach show students how to be effective writers, we're seeing all of those other foundational things, all of those language things that they really need to become more proficient with. And we're working on it, but it's going to take time. Yeah.
Davis?
I'm glad you did go first. and I concur. I learned more about English when I took Latin than I did in English class. I heard you talk about the STAR 360, the testing component, or the I'm sorry, not the testing component, the screening component of it. And I just want to get a little clarification on it, because I think what I heard you say was that the assessments change based on how the student is answering previous questions. Does that mean that the questions are modified to make it easier, to give them more success, or just asked in a different way?
Sure. So I think I can answer that based on the experience I've had with it so far, and if I don't answer your question, just let me know.
Oh, don't worry.
So the questions are adaptable to get easier or more challenging. However, the score that you would get for the student as a basic screen would be in a percentile relevant to what the norm would be really for that level. The adaptiveness really changes in order to give you instructional components. So part of the assessment, the screening will give you like percentile ranks for students, and we'll group kids into who needs an urgent intervention, who needs an intervention, who's on watch, who's at level. So I think those levels remain the same regardless of how the test adapts. The information that you can get from the adaptive part is you can go into each student individually, and you can get an instructional plan that will show you based on their score and how the test adapted while they were taking it, what are the foundational skills, what are their reading skills, what are the comprehension skills that they would need to work on at their level.
Excuse me. Okay, so it's more of an after the fact.
Yes.
Okay.
So like if a student adapts way down, they're not going to end up in the 70th percentile the same as like another student who didn't adapt. Those scores are still can be compared to each other, but where it really does break down is it will give you approximately what grade level they're reading at. And then the really great part for teachers is it does break down very specific instructional strategies that they could work on at their level in order to move them along in their development.
Perfect. Thank you for clearing that up for me.
So why am I raising my hand? I'm running this meeting. Never mind. old habits. Sorry. And I will tell you, I'm paying attention, John, because you were talking about intervention. I'm asking about extension. Does it tell you above reading level as well? Because you're talking about intervention to reading level.
Yes, it does.
See.
So it really
Excellent.
breaks it down for you per each student and then per your class or per a grade level. You can go into it and it tells you based on where that student's level is, above, below, or at, but really specific to that student what they would be able to work on that would benefit them.
Right, so if they're at grade level, if they're above grade level, you're going to see how far above grade level, so you're not
it's
stalling
really
them.
interesting actually
Good.
to look at the ones above because it gets into some pretty complex suggestions.
Yep. And Cinda, you got a question?
So am I hearing you correctly in that it can give you some summary information about the class as a whole, too, and then detail information regarding each individual student?
Yes, so you can screen, do a simple screening report and get percentiles for, a whole school, a whole grade level, a whole class. But then from there, you can individually go into, if you are a classroom teacher, you could go into your class and it would give you generalizations for your class and possible groupings for small groups. Or you can go in by individual student and then it would give you individual skills per student to work on. So it can be used to really, the universal screening part is kind of that bigger component, but then it does have other components that break it down to the individual student level and data that you can get on that student.
Okay.
But you can't obtain a summary score for the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't obtain a classroom summary score.
But it can break it down so you could organize that population into groups
Yeah.
based on the results.
It does.
Yep. Okay.
So I look at just one example of how we've used this. I'll look at the students' Fountas and Pinnell scores, which is another assessment that we use. And I can put students in groups based on their Fountas and Pinnell scores and based on their goals and their learning objectives in the STAR. I can create this group either from one classroom or from a student from this classroom and this classroom and this classroom, put them together, and it will give me group goals for that group as well. I can make a group of 2, I can make a group of 10, I can make a group of 50. So it will give me all kinds of goals based on the student, based on the small group, or based on that small group within a larger group. So it has a tremendous capacity for us to learn about the students' areas of weaknesses and their strengths, and direct our instruction and differentiate our instruction based on that. It's really, it's an exciting tool.
Absolutely.
So these folks, like they always do, have answered that very, very well. I just would want to extrapolate bigger than just this and say, and sort of draw the board's attention to the larger issue here. You've heard us talk before about sort of the fact that standards are standards, and we don't have easier standards for some and harder standards for others. The standards are the standards, and they're all rigorous. What is different, though, is the way that educators support students to achieve those standards. So in the not-so-distant past, you would have an assessment that may or may not be at a student's instructional level. So if it were not, and if all of the questions on the exam were just so hard for that particular student, that student would fail. And then really, in a way, all you'd know is that they failed. What you wouldn't really know is at what point can you start instructing them. So it's if the sort of the subtext of the question might be, is it a computer adaptive test sort of designed to make people feel good only? And the answer is no. What it is designed to do is get to a point where a student can answer questions so that the educators who review those results can make some determination about at what point is their entry point so that they can achieve the standard. That doesn't change. But if all I get is fail or F, or on the other hand, 100, I might never know how much beyond 100 they could get. So that's the value in this, and that's the difference between this and other kinds of assessments that came before it. And that's really relates to a lot of the things that you've heard us say over a period of time when we're talking about differentiating instruction. That's not the same thing as, trying to make a student comfortable so that they don't feel bad. It's to differentiate instruction so you can have access to a student, because if they've just shut down, I can't do it, you can give me 50 of these problems and I'm going to still get them wrong, then there's no growth, there's no entry point. So that's really a big difference in what we're doing in more recent years than what we might have done even 10 years ago. So just a larger context.
And along those lines, my question would be, how can those results and tools and assessments be used to help in things like parent-teacher conferences?
That's a great question. So one of the things that our teachers do is the teachers are able to extract the reports for each individual student and really focus on what are those students' goals. And some of those goals happen during conferring when they are meeting one-on-one with the student. But another thing that they're able to do is to share with the parents what the goals are, very specifically, using the language that is common and the language that you're hearing over and over again with the standards, the language that we use in our schools in reading and writing, and really being able to explain specifically and systematically what those goals will look like. And so we've asked teachers to look at every child's individual report and then share goals with parents during those conferences so that parents will also know the goals that we're working on and can help to support the kids at home.
But we do have to admit that we have a huge learning curve on this tool. And though we have explored a number of different features, we feel that there's so much more to learn. And though we are sharing this information with parents, we're sharing it with the understanding that this is new for us. And the best we can do is, kind of show your child's performance. And we've encouraged teachers to do that during conferences.
And I guess the other question following up on that is how does it help you to establish like rubrics for projects when you're talking about assessments and capabilities and, what you're trying to develop? Does it feed into the things that you're doing in the classroom that the students' scores are based on?
Well, the information that we're getting through the assessment is standards-based information. So all the work that we've done on reading and writing and math standards directly correlates with the information that the tool is giving us, so that we can look at a standard that we know a child needs to work on and go back to our rubrics and our essential questions and our unpacked documents, and use that as our sort of blueprint on what we're going to teach, and then determine how we're going to teach it.
And then we can use the formative assessment tool to do a quick check-in with the students. So we've identified that students need to work on identifying theme in a story. And so we look for questions. STAR has a tremendous database of questions, and so we can actually sort for that standard and that concept. So looking at standard 2 in reading, literature, and then theme. And so we can pull this apart, create questions for the students, and then see how are they doing. So we can actually progress monitor them using this, and then again regroup the students and figure out what we need to do next. And that helps us to create the instruction so that it's meaningful and relevant to where they are and what they need.
And it might be more of a question for you guys on this side of the table, so I won't put you on the spot because it's a bigger district picture, but we're going towards a standards-based grading system in the high school. Where does a tool like this feed into a standards-based grading type environment? Told you I wasn't going to put you on the spot.
No, it's an excellent question. It's integral to that in that it will be informative. We are talking, we've been talking about the right time to begin that initiative at the elementary level. And it's a question of capacity. I think you see tonight we have a lot of stuff going on in the district. But the day is coming close when we're going to need to begin that work. And when that happens, this will help us to inform how we develop that tool. As Diane mentioned, how specifically that will impact us is to be determined, because this is a new tool for us and we're still in the process of learning. But, you're going to hear me say later when we talk about smarter balanced results, everything is a data point. Nothing is any more than a data point. And so we take what Smarter Balance gives us and we combine that with other data points like Faunus and Pinnell and other assessments that we use, end-of-year assessments in math, end-of-unit assessments in math, and so on. And then we try to see where these different things connect. So we don't take any one measure as the story of the child. We take composite of a variety of measures, and we still resist saying that's the definitive story about student X. But we can begin to draw conclusions about what's likely to be the story of child X, and then we calibrate our instruction, or try to calibrate our instruction towards that. So it's a conversation that's coming.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of the board? Administration?
Well, I just have to give fair due because I've had a comment about everybody, and I have to say, but at the risk of overplaying my hand, I think I'm fond of all our teachers, and with good reason, as you see tonight. But I have to say about this particular group is I've worked in a lot of districts, and I've worked with reading specialists or language arts coordinators in all the districts that I've worked in a variety of capacities. And I'll just say openly, the community does not know the resource that it has with these people, including Sydney, who's not here. The work that they do that has transformed the way we think and execute our elementary literacy, it's unparalleled. And I feel like I need to say that because you've seen them a lot, and it's like when you see people a lot, you maybe take them for granted. But I would just tell you this is a transformative team, and the work they've done, you just I can't calculate. So I just want to thank them, and we just look forward to what continues to happen with all the work that they do.
So we want to thank you. Oh, go ahead, Cinda.
Just an overall comment, and thank you very much for all of the work that you're doing. But I want to say that with all of the groups that were here, I found this very, very informative, and I think it's a great opportunity to see what normally happens behind the scenes, where so many of us don't get that opportunity to see what you're doing every day for our students, and certainly for people at home to be able to see that too. And the curriculum work that's being done is just an evolving, constant work in progress. And I'd like to thank Dr. McLaughlin as well as administration. Thanks.
So we're going to thank you the most because you stayed the latest.
We got to hear everything else, so.
So you're troopers. Thank you for all your patience and a great presentation. And that brings us to, believe it or not, item number 9 of 17, which is update on the board's request to seek intervener status from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, also known as FERC, and that will be from Marge.
Thank you. So when we were last together on November 2nd, one of the things that you were very interested in was putting together a letter to try and seek intervener status. And when we left, I was really charged with operating on your behalf. So what I'm going to do is tell you what ensued. So the first thing I did was I made a contact with Town Manager Eileen Cabanal, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate her effort. What I wanted to do was I wanted to be able to make contact with the Town Council's environmental attorney, because Cinda had put together a letter that you were looking at, and you wanted to make sure that the letter you put together would be meritorious, meaning that it would fulfill what you wanted it to do. So knowing that she is the attorney that's working with the Town Council, I wanted to find out, was it possible for me to make contact with her on your behalf? And after she set the stage, I did make contact with this person, and her name is Joanna Turangu. I hope I'm saying it correctly, from Drummond Woodsum. She is experienced in writing letters for intervener status. And the first thing she said to me is, I would need to make sure with our in-house ethics committee that it's appropriate for me to do that, because I've been hired by Merrimack's Town Council. That's the number one thing. And I realize that the Merrimack School Board is not the only group that's seeking my assistance. The Merrimack Conservation Commission is also interested. And so that's the first thing I have to do, is just go through my in-house ethics committee. The second thing I want to make sure is that I've not violated the council in any way, because I've been working with them for a long time. So I'm pleased to tell you that upon reflection and her work with the in-house ethics committee, they do not see a problem in it as far as just putting the letter together for you, no more than that. If you needed to go further with some type of legal help, she has informed me that she is connected to many environmental attorneys, and she would offer up others. This Thursday, if you've taken a look at the Town Council's agenda, you will see that one of the items on their agenda is, it's called this, Town Council / School District / Conservation Commission Letters of Engagement Discussion. And so after Thursday night, we will know whether the council has approved this to happen. And when that happens, then contact is able to be made with the environmental attorney, and she tells me that she is very aware of timelines, regulation, and so on. She will comprise a letter on your behalf, and it's 3 to 4 pages. There are lots of elements to this, more than was done before. And they must be met. If these are not met, then in fact, intervener status would be denied, because the chapter and verse wasn't written, if you will. So there's definitely some very special things that must be done. So I believe that the step that we must wait for is November 19th and what the council decides. But one way or the other, you will be furnished with an environmental attorney.
Questions from the board? Davis?
So after the 19th, depending on what happens at the town council meeting, let's assume, well, no, either way, it doesn't matter. What is the next step after that?
So if, in fact, the town council says yes, you can use, I will just say her first name, Joanna, then contact will be made with Joanna, and she will go forward. She might ask some specificity like map coordinates or whatever, but she clearly knows how to put it together because she will have done one for the town and so on. So she will become the person who puts this letter together for you.
And so that would come back in theory.
It will come back to you on December 7th for your approval.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure of. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the board? Seeing none, we will look forward to seeing a letter on December 7th. And on to item number 10, which is the board's response to the draft letter to Kinder Morgan regarding land surveys. At our last meeting, Cinda put on the agenda to request that we have a position regarding the surveying of school district property if a request, and we do expect one from Kinder Morgan, comes. That being said, we all received a draft letter in our email. I printed out copies for the board. Based on the timeline, I think it's recommended at this point from even administration's point of view that we try to finalize this evening. The reason for that is December 7th is a bit away, and a request for surveying could come in at any time. So that being said, I will read the letter into public record because it's the only chance we'll get to really put it out there, and then we will entertain any edits that we see appropriate. So the letter's addressed to Mr. Alan Four, who is the public relations person for Kinder Morgan. It says, Dear Mr. Four, the Merrimack School Board recognizes that Kinder Morgan / Tennessee Gas Pipeline Company might be interested in surveying property along the route of the proposed Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline owned by the Merrimack School District. The Merrimack School Board is willing to cooperate with you in this regard, but wanted to proactively let you know the following conditions we have for granting approval to survey. First bullet, the lands owned by the Merrimack School District were purchased and maintained through taxpayer funding. As such, they belong to the people of Merrimack. Bullet 2, the Merrimack School Board acts as a custodian of these properties on behalf of the public, and that public has a right to know about uses, development, and activities on these properties. As such, the Merrimack School Board is willing to grant Kinder Morgan access to survey Merrimack School District properties under the following conditions. Bullet 1. A request to survey the property in question must be scheduled by requesting such of the Merrimack School District at 36 McElwain Street, Merrimack, New Hampshire 03054, phone number 603-424-6200. So that will be our first edit because that number was wrong. Bullet 2, written permission given to Kinder Morgan in writing by the Merrimack School District designating the date and time of the survey. Bullet 3, surveys will originate at the Merrimack School District Central Office at the address listed above. Bullet 4, surveys will be attended by at least 2 members of the Merrimack School District and 2 Merrimack School Board members. Bullet 5, any information that comes as a result of the survey is public knowledge, as these are the public's lands. As such, the following are required. Sub-bullet 1. The Merrimack School District staff and board members are free to discuss these surveys publicly. Sub-bullet 2. The Merrimack School District staff and board members are free to record, audio and video, these surveys and share publicly. No access to the Merrimack School District properties, developed or undeveloped, will be granted without these conditions being met. Physical access by Kinder Morgan or its associates on the property without having met these conditions will be considered trespassing. Respectfully, the Merrimack School Board. Christopher S. Ortega, Chairman, Shannon M. Barnes, Vice Chair, Davis Powell, Board Member, Andy Schneider, Board Member, and Cinda Gualiumi, Board Member. Are there any suggested edits other than the correction in phone number? Davis.
I think that we should enter this in as a motion and then make adjustments at that point.
So Are you making a motion to move the letter as presented?
I am.
Is there a second? Seconded by Cinda. Are there any adjustments? Davis.
So this is more wordsmithing than anything. And I had discussed this with Chairman Ortega earlier, and he was on board for what I had suggested. The first bullet point that starts the land zone by the Merrimack School District were purchased, and they are, insert the phrase, they are maintained through taxpayer funding. Down into a request to survey, should we put a time limit stipulation on there saying that you need to notify us X number of days prior to wanting to do this? Because I can see the letter coming in or the request coming in, hey, tomorrow we want to come out and look at your land, and that's going to put difficulty on getting 2 board members and 2 staff members and everything. My first thought was throwing 10 days prior out there, 10 calendar days, which in essence is just about 2 weeks. I don't know if someone else has a different thought on that.
Andy?
I think it's covered because it says request to survey the property in question must be scheduled by requesting as such. So that puts the onus on us to be able to say when we can request it. I mean, it's possible that we could do it more quickly, but in my mind, that was covered by that first sentence.
I thought that, or I went both ways on this.
Yeah.
I pulled in Andy and looked at it from both ways. And my thought with putting a stipulation of a time frame out there is that way they can't turn around and say, well, we asked for it, you said no, when in fact they only gave us 24 hours notice.
So
that's where I was coming from with that.
I hear where you're coming from, but it does, basically it says unless you hit all these rules, you're trespassing. So I mean, we've sort of caught it at the bottom. But there are issues here in this, on all of these things that either we're going to stick to everything or nothing. Because we basically said, everything that's written here you guys need to stick to. So for example, if for some reason some board members get sick and there's not 2 board members, are we in violation of this? So, I mean, I was thinking things like up to 2 board members or a minimum or something. You know, we have to be careful how we position this letter because we have to live by the rules just like they do.
I agree.
You see what I mean? So being too specific on like 10 days, it could work against us, for us, or whatever.
Well, I'm willing to. I mean, again, that's my feeling. So I'm just going to put it out there at least 10 days and see if it sticks.
Did you want to send? I guess because you have quite a few things going, and some could fly and some could crash. Should we take each of your motions one at a time? Does that make sense to you? So we get edits that make sense done, and just work on those that might not.
Yeah, I guess
jive?
because it would get too confusing otherwise.
Okay, so I guess your first motion would be to edit
That
first bullet to add the words "they are."
They are.
So is that your motion?
That is.
And I will second. And is there any discussion? Jake, I see your hand up.
I would get rid of the "they" and just say "are" because it maintains the parallel
And are
structure with
maintained.
"were purchased" and "are maintained."
I was going to defer to our English experts because I was having a hard time saying "purchased" and "are maintained." My tongue doesn't work that way.
I'm just wondering if we need a semicolon.
Sorry to say.
It would be appropriate to say "were purchased and are maintained."
Okay, so would you be willing to drop the "they"?
Sure.
Okay, so willing to second the dropping of the "they."
All right.
Great. So that being said, are there any more discussions about this edit? So all those in favor of adding the word "are" before "maintained," signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? School student position? Since it was your idea, yes. And that motion passes 4-0 with the student rep in favor.
Okay, so now I'm making a motion that we put in a time limit of at least 10 days prior to scheduling the request by Kinder Morgan.
Where are you adding that language, and could you give...
A request to survey the property in question must be scheduled at least 10 days prior by requesting such of the Merrimack School District, 36 McKelvin, blah, 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 blah.
There's a second? Okay, second by Cinda. And questions, comments?
Would you be open to just adding a statement after that that says, please note, scheduling may take up to 10 calendar days?
That would work for me.
So it gives us the flexibility, and it kind of puts them on notice of what they might be able to expect.
Andrew?
Well, the way you worded it is ambiguous because it says the scheduling could take 10 days to do it. When in fact what you mean is the survey you want as opposed to the scheduling, the activity of scheduling. We need the English teachers here that are understanding to do that.
They're tired.
Oh, yes.
So I guess the question is, a request to survey the property, so the district requires that 10 days, 10 days, calendar days. A request 10 calendar days prior to
what my
date of
intent
survey.
is to ask us 10 days prior to
Date of
wanting
survey?
to be on the property. Yeah, that's my intent.
Okay. Jake and then Cinda.
So I think just adding the 10 days prior wouldn't work because that's 10 days prior to the request, which isn't feasibly possible because you have to make the request the moment you do. So if you said a request to survey the property in question must be submitted 10 days prior to the date intended for the survey.
Yeah, that's the specific part.
That works too.
Are we good with that? Do we have any questions or concerns? So Cinda, then Andy.
I had just maybe an alternative.
Okay.
Something to the effect of, please note that the time, or something like, please note from the time we receive the request, it may take 10 days before we're able to satisfy your request for a survey or something like that. So it's kind of saying from receipt of the letter, if we have to, it may take 10 days before you may access the property.
So I guess the question is, do we want 10 days to schedule it or 10 days to let them survey? Because that still puts us in a crunch, saying that we have time to actually get the letter, disseminate the letter, establish the date. So honestly, I think that, what I think they need to do is, and just this is not language suggested because it's going to be a mess, but they need to provide us a series of date and times that work, and within 10 days we will respond to you with a date and time among your requested dates. No date prior to 14 days of the date of receipt of the letter will be considered. And that way it says we have time to coordinate multiple schedules. So I don't know how you feel about that. I don't know if that's your intent, Davis, if it's gotten messier.
It sounds good, but I have to see it or hear it.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to, oh my goodness, write it down.
I definitely lost it. Right?
Okay.
I mean, I thought I had something, but now
No. I think the problem is, by the time we receive the letter, by the time the letter is disseminated, by the time we find 2 board members and 2 staff members, that could take 10 days in and of itself. So if they expect on the 10th day to get on the property, that's going to be a challenge. So that being said, I think that, okay, let me think about this. In your request for survey, the Merrimack School District requires a minimum of 3 dates and times not to occur prior to 14 days. I'm doing it wrong. I missed it, but prior to after the date of notice. So basically, the first date that they could request is 14 days after they send the letter.
We're going to need a Venn diagram to figure this out.
This is crazy. Oh, Mr. DeLude has ideas. So, okay, so the survey will be scheduled at the school district's convenience no less than 14 days upon the date
After receipt.
of receipt,
Of confirmation.
confirmation of receipt.
Or because if it takes us up to 10 days between receipt and then actually voting on it to allow them to come, then you should say 14 days of confirmation of the request.
Cinda?
And I like the 14 days because that will most likely put us with a school board meeting to kind of keep that visibility and
Yeah.
transparency to announce that the property is going to be surveyed.
So, in a perfect world. So, can I just add one more caveat, and then I'll let Andy. By certified mail, must be scheduled, requested by certified mail, and that way we have a timeline of send and receipt. Do you like the idea?
Sure.
Okay. Andy?
I'd like to recommend that instead of 14 days, you say 10 business days.
Okay.
It's cleaner.
That's fine.
Because then it takes into account holidays, which is possible depending when the request is made.
Okay.
So where are we at?
Hold on.
On the first bullet.
Bear with me because I'm trying to write at the same time. So, a request to survey the property in question must be sent by certified mail requesting access to the property no less than 10 business days upon receipt of the letter.
At a time convenient to the district. You had thrown that in there somewhere.
At a time convenient to the district.
And I like that.
And
I
it's-
think, and thank you, Mr. Leo. I like that because I think that takes into account if it happens to be a school property that it's convenient to us. We don't want them out there when kids are around or, whatever. So I like that. I like that suggestion.
So, are we good? Wow. Okay, and then and we'll include the correction of the phone number in that edit.
Okay, that'll work.
Okay. All those in favor of the...
Can you read it back and where are we putting it?
Okay. Bullet 1, a request to survey the property in question must be sent by certified mail requesting access to the property no less than 10 business days in advance of, at a time convenient to the district.
Missed a piece.
I did.
It's from receipt. You should say no less than 10 business days from receipt
From
of the
receipt at a time
right.
convenient to the district.
Missed the when the
Yes.
10 days started from.
You should see the scratch I got right here, so it's tough. Sorry, guys. And correction of the phone number as well.
And you would still have the address and everything on
Yep.
there as well.
Yes, such letter will be sent to 36 McElwain Street. All those in favor of the really messy edit, but really clear edit, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nobody? And the student position?
In favor.
In favor. Are there any other suggested edits?
He still has the floor.
You still have the
He
floor.
made the motion.
Well, it passed.
No, he put the
I
letter
think,
out.
yeah, but I think we're taking amendments to the motion.
Yeah, we're
Do you
taking.
have any other?
We're taking other edits,
You
and
said
then
you had several. That you wanted to do.
I do, but I'm willing to yield
to Jake from State Farm. No.
to save my breath right now.
Okay, Cindy, you had.
Yeah, I just had a kind of a picky thing in the second paragraph where it says the Merrimack School Board is willing to cooperate with you in this regard, but wanted to proactively let you know the following conditions we have for granting approval to survey. To survey the Merrimack School District land. So it was more than just, it was more of a clarifying statement of exactly what they're going to survey.
Second.
I would have to say they're not conditions. And that's just been the thing that was kind of like when I was reading over it earlier. They're not conditions. They're facts. I would say the Merrimack School Board is willing to cooperate with you in this regard, but want to provide you with the understanding of the
guidelines
of the oversight of this property, I would say, because the conditions are actually underneath as such. The conditions aren't the 2 bullets above it. The conditions are below it. So I would say that the Merrimack School Board is willing to cooperate with you in this regard, but is obliged to provide you with an understanding of our oversight of this property. The English major liked it.
Well, but if you read that sentence, Merrimack School Board is willing to cooperate with you in this regard, but wanted to proactively let you know the following requirements we have for granting approval to the survey. Because then you go into the fact that the lands were owned and all that other stuff, and then you get into the conditions.
But they're not requirements. It's just the fact that they're owned by the taxpayer and that we are the custodian. So I would call it the
reasons.
I would call it the understanding of our stewardship. Jake?
You could say proactively make understood the following facts essential to the granting of approval to survey. Is that too wordy?
Well, why don't you put it into a sentence? Say, Merrimack School Board is willing to cooperate with you in this regard, but wanted to proactively let you know that the lands are owned by the Merrimack School District, purchased and maintained through taxpayer funding, belonging to the people of Merrimack, and the school board acts as a custodian instead of bullets.
So take out the bullets.
Bullets and make a letter, explanation letter. Then you get rid of the fact you're listing facts or whatever it is. I see an English teacher nodding his head over there or something.
Kill the bullets. Track. So essentially what we're doing is we're creating a paragraph again. We're getting rid of the bullets. We're basically saying that Merrimack School Board is willing to cooperate with you in this regard. It is oh my gosh, it's late. Sorry, guys. So much easier to edit at 7. So go ahead.
I want to ask a clarifier. Did each of you, after looking at Chris's letter, come up with a list of things that were concerning to you that you want fixed? Because I'm just wondering. I'm now just taking it all in here and just wondering if it's possible for you to submit all of those factors and have us craft something else for you to see. Because I think the thing I so worry about is, and maybe Shannon feels better about it, is each of you is making a contribution, and to try and keep up with it and make sure that the letter still, comes forward with what you want done. And I'm not going to be as worried about December 7th yet, because that's the next time you come together.
So you feel that we have till September 7th?
I do. I'm thinking that, especially with the Thanksgiving holiday and so on.
Okay.
Given just submittal and all the rest that I've heard. So I'm just wondering if it would be easier so that we can represent all of your thought. And between Mark and I think we can, or Mark and me, I think we can maybe put something together, because each of you are trying to be in service of one another. I don't know how you're sharing it and trying to write at the same time, but I have markings to markings, and I would rather take the time, because this is a very important piece for you.
Whatever. So, that being said, I'm comfortable with us providing thoughts to the superintendent and having a second draft, as long as, based on your conversations with the town council, which is really our concern, and the town manager really, that we have the time before they're going to be presenting a request to us. So that's our biggest concern, is that we don't want to put you in a position where you don't have a position to respond.
No, worst came to worst, I call for a special meeting, but I really feel this letter is so important to you, and the fact that in talking to the town manager, I think you easily could be asked to have your land surveyed and so on. I'd rather take the time and try and craft it for you, because I think it's very difficult to go line by line. I think if that would be helpful.
Andy?
A couple of comments about that. I'm okay with that, giving that.
Okay.
Part of the problem is that there's a couple of comments that I had that weren't grammatical or things like that. For example, one of the ones was, and I mentioned this earlier, is it says, be attended by at least 2 members of the school district and 2 members of the school board. Again, if something were to happen on the day it's all scheduled and only 1 school board member could make it, for example, I want to make sure that the letter is flexible enough to handle that. Whether we say up to or members of the school board to allow any from 1 to 3, for example.
Well, 3 makes a quorum.
That's right. So
1 to 2.
Up to 2. So maybe what we say is up to 2, just up to, or 1 or 2, whatever. But I just don't want us to get in a pickle if we can only have.
So at
one
least 2
person
members of the Merrimack School District and assigned members of the Merrimack School Board. And just they don't need to know how many of us are going to show up. That's our choice, not theirs. Is that fair? And they don't have to know. Just won't be quorum, we promise. So.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
But the other thing I did is, at some point when we were talking about surveys, there was a pushback from Kinder Morgan about confidentiality of tools and things that they use through their process. And the last 2 bullets, it says Merrimack School District staff and board members are free to discuss these surveys publicly, and they are free to record audio and video of the surveys and share publicly. We have to understand that it's possible that a methodology that they use as part of it, not the results of the survey, what they surveyed, but maybe the type of survey equipment that they use or a program that they use could be proprietary to them. So they may push back on that dimension of it, saying freely record anything that you do could violate a confidentiality thing on something that they might be using. So I understand that we as members will be there observing and can share publicly the results, but there's a potential issue as they, as a vendor that do this sort of work, may have some complaints about that part of it. That's my only caution.
And to that end, I would say that's their problem, not ours. What we want out of this is the ability to be transparent, and any tool and opportunity we have to do that is at our discretion to execute. If they have a problem with that, well, then they need to outline they need to specify their concerns to see if they're palatable to this board.
So that means, for example, that if they see these and they push back and say that we need to be able to monitor what's recorded or whatever for whatever legal reasons, then we as a board would have to, through a majority, approve that, because it would be a contradiction to the terms of the letter. That's what that means, what you just described. If we leave it as it is, and they push back, then we as a board, majority-wise, would have to agree to that before we allow the surveying to occur.
Yes, because that's changing the terms of what we're accepting as a majority once this letter is approved.
I just want to make sure that the board is aware of a potential pushback and what we would be required to do as part of this.
They've already pushed back on the town council, and the town council's not budging, so I'm fine with it. Cinda?
Yeah, and then we'd put it as an agenda item to make sure that we're okay with the whatever their concerns were.
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't compromise out our rights before we actually ask for them, honestly. That's my personal opinion, but I'd rather put out what we want, and if we have to compromise, we at least know why we're compromising. And if it makes good business sense to compromise, we do so. If it doesn't, we don't. But we make an informed decision on why we're compromising before we do it, not take it out of the letter. But that's my personal opinion. So, are there any other thoughts? Davis?
I would suggest that after we all provide our input and you craft a letter, that this be run by legal to make sure that we're not putting ourselves on to something that we shouldn't be putting ourselves onto, if that makes sense. That we're not overextending or anything.
Oh, please.
So I think the essence of the conversation is to try and garner your intent. We'll try and work the language, but the discussion is very helpful to know what you're attempting to do, and then have legal counsel say, that really wouldn't be in your best interest,
Exactly.
or you need to have more latitude, or whatever. So I think the space of time will give us the opportunity to put something together and also have it checked out.
And we
If you
wouldn't
will.
need specific legal counsel to environmental concerns for that, correct? We would,
No,
we would
I
use-
probably would use our own
Right.
counsel.
Sounds fair. Are there any other material concerns to the letter other than wordsmithing? That being said, we will look for a second draft on December 7th.
December 7th, and can I ask, if you don't have it informed tonight that you want to give over, could you give it over by tomorrow afternoon? Just email it
Absolutely.
right in. That'd be helpful.
Okay, I think we beat that dead horse. That being said, we're up to another highlight reel, which I'm excited about. Item number 11 is smarter balanced assessment. I'm sorry, David? Oh, I'm sorry, Andy. Well, he asked. Sorry.
I have a question of the board. We're sitting at the 3.5-hour mark of our meeting, and we're going into what I consider to be an extremely juicy topic
We
that
are.
I have many questions about.
Okay.
But I can tell you that my brain is clicking on about 3.5 cylinders based on what we've done so far.
Okay.
So I have a request, if the board, if we want to take it up as a vote, that we put this on one of the lead agenda items for our next board meeting, so we give it the time that it needs to go through
So there's been a request to table agenda item number 11.
until the next meeting, and put it first on the list.
Is there a second?
I second.
And I would just like to say to those watching at home that might be waiting for this, we want to give it the due diligence that it needs to be able to understand what the impacts are and stuff like that. So that's my request. So,
Cinda? Elsa? Go ahead.
So, knowing what's coming on December 7th, normally our rule of thumb is if we have someone coming from the outside to see you, for example, the trustees or a trustee or whatever, we would put them first. May I have the opportunity to schedule the agenda such that I play to the guests, but make this
is it
as
just
much front as I possibly
is
can?
it just like a trustee and not like a school group that's coming in, or
We don't have any large school group that I know that's coming, but usually if we have an outside guest, then we put them first on purpose, and I'd like
Right.
to have that opportunity to do that.
That's fine. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Okay. So, Cindy, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say I agree. I think a topic as important as this, I would rather have it at least one of the leading topics for the next one versus trying to tackle it all right now.
Fair enough, because I think you go till at least 11, honestly, at least. And we have non-public, so. That being said, we will put the motion to a vote to table item number 11, Smarter Balanced Assessment Results. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And student rep's position?
In favor.
So it carries 4-0-0 with the student rep in favor of tabling until our next meeting. I know.
Easily done. And undone and redone.
Okay. And we're going to move on to the new item 11, which is item 12, which is the first review of new policy, which is animals in school, and Superintendent Chaffrey.
And I realize the hour of the evening, but I do want to do this because normally a policy goes before you 3 times. And the reason the policy is being put in front of you, and I want to just emphasize such, is because Reeds Ferry Elementary School wants to engage in alignment with the Merrimack Public Library on a program called Pause to Read. And this has to do with bringing a dog, Ruby, to the library with a group of children to have the children read to the dog over time. And the research behind reading dogs is that it will enhance a student's fluency. With knowing that, we do not have any policy in hand to be able to share with an outside entity, and so we feel it is in our best interest to have this. So the policy is entitled Animals in School, and it says the following. The board recognizes that under the proper conditions, animals can be an effective teaching aid. In order to protect both children and animals, the following guidelines are adopted for use in all schools in the district. Number 1, the bringing of animals into the classroom must not violate city, state, federal ordinances. 2, the only animals and animal products, that is, all feces for dissection, allowed in a classroom must be for a specific and appropriate educational purpose and shall be allowed for the amount of time necessary to achieve the educational goal. 3, precautions should be taken to minimize transmission of all diseases and injuries, that is, salmonella, rabies, ringworm, bites, scratches, etc. 4, all animals must be in good physical condition and vaccinated against transmittable diseases. Dogs, cats, and ferrets require proof of current rabies vaccination. Animals are to be kept clean and free of intestinal parasites, fleas, ticks, mites, and lice. 5, certain groups of people may be more susceptible to diseases, including infants, children, pregnant women, and those with weakened immune systems. Consult with parents to determine special considerations needed for children who are immunocompromised, who have allergies, or who have asthma. 6, the teacher will be responsible for the proper control of animals brought to school for instructional purposes, including the effective protection of children when animals are in the school. This will include keeping the animal in an appropriate cage or container, supervising human-animal contact, and handling fecal matter in a sanitary manner. 7, no animals are to be allowed to run freely in the classroom's food areas or activity areas. 8, areas should be designated for animal contact. Such areas should be properly cleaned regularly and after animal contact. Food or drink should not be consumed in these areas. 9, all fecal material must be cleaned from the cage of any mammal or bird on an as-needed basis, at a minimum of 1 time per week, and appropriate sanitizer used. Reptiles, fish, and insects must be cared for in a manner to minimize odor and maintain health. Persons cleaning cages must wear gloves, masks, and glasses or goggles. Cleaning should be performed by people older than 5 years and under the supervision of an adult. Ideally, cleaning should be performed when other children are not in the room. 10, wash hands after contact with animals, animal products, or their environment. Hand hygiene should be stressed using verbal and written educational materials. 11, certain animals pose additional risk and contact should not be permitted with young children. 12, wild or exotic animals are not permitted in classrooms unless under the control of a professional. It will be the responsibility of the teacher to provide for a plan of care for classroom-housed animals in the event of an emergency school closing, which might cause disruption of the routine care of the animals. In each school where these animals are housed, there should be a plan whereby the staff member who visits the school daily during the emergency closing will be aware of the animal's presence and see to their care. If no staff member visits the school daily, in such circumstances, the teacher is responsible for the daily care of the animals. Teachers must be contacted prior to having animals in their classroom. No animal should be at school unless the teacher involved is familiar with the appropriate care, feeding, and handling of that animal, and of any potential dangers caused by that animal. It shall be the responsibility of the teacher to become familiar with each animal as it relates to the well-being of the individual students in that particular classroom. The principal shall be advised of any animals to be housed in the classroom. At the principal's discretion, permission to keep the animal may be denied based on these considerations. 1, the purpose for the animal's presence. 2, the ability of the teacher to control the animal, and or 3, the past practice in the classroom. Unauthorized animals on school grounds. Unauthorized animals are not allowed in school buildings or on school grounds. Children and staff will be instructed to keep their own animals off school grounds. The appropriate town official will be called and requested to impound all animals taken into custody by school personnel. The legal reference is the National Association of State Public Health Veterinarians, Incorporated, Compendium of Measures to Prevent Disease Associated with Animals in Public Settings. So, do you have any?
Are there questions of the board? Davis?
Yes. Thank you for bringing this to us. I just have a couple questions and or things if they could be incorporated. First thing is, it doesn't address service animals specifically.
I would just say that there is another policy for that, and so this particular policy from the School Boards Association was specifically to be able to handle the library and reading. So if we want to have a service animal policy after this, I would bring that forward at another time.
Okay. I think we should. I think by law we're required to allow certain service animals regardless. I just wanted to, in this document, to capture that, we're not trying to circumvent that.
No, there are two separate ones, and
Okay.
this I brought forward to meet a specific purpose.
So we don't currently have something.
We do not have that in the
Okay.
books.
All
no.
right. Yes. Then I would, in some way or fashion, I would like to have that addressed.
All right.
Item number 1: bringing of animals into the classroom. I know it's picky, but we're not a city; we're a town. I think that should.
Right. It came from the model policy,
Right.
and I didn't change it,
Yep,
but I
no,
can
I get
certainly
it.
put town.
I get it.
No problem.
And the other thing that I'm concerned with is, as far as unauthorized animals on school grounds, I understand the intent, but we need to figure out how this is going to affect outside of school hours activities. And the example that comes to mind right away are the soccer fields at Reeds Ferry. Every weekend people are bringing their pets to watch the games.
Mm-hmm. Earlier today, I just responded that when Shannon and I were preparing for the meeting, I think she raised the concern as well. In any model policy, obviously, one has to look at for one's own needs. And probably what I would recommend is for the second time, or as we talk, I would take out the section unauthorized animals on school grounds. And if we do that, we simply are talking about animals within the school, which is exactly what its intent is. So that was sitting there, and I think we simply remove it because it does not meet our need. If that would...
I think that would...
Because eventually what I'll do is I'm going to take everything under advisement, and I will probably bring something back to you for the final night. But right now, what I think on a previous conversation, just in preparation for tonight, and hearing you and knowing what we want to do in the first place, which addresses the library specifically or within the building, if we just take out this section, I think it will do it.
No, I wanted to give you my
I appreciate
thoughts.
it. Yep.
However you come back with it at the second reading is fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Andy?
So the only comment I had was the only place it talks really about allergies is under Section 5. It says certain groups of people may be more susceptible to diseases, including infants, children, pregnant women, those with weak immune. Consult with parents to determine special considerations needed for children who are immunocompromised, who have allergies or have asthma. One of the things that we probably need to put into this is that if an animal is scheduled to be brought into school, one of the things, we're very proactive about food allergies, but there's also animal allergies that are there, like with dogs or cats or whatever. I'd like to somehow bring that a little more to the forefront, about proactive about notifying so that allergies can be handled. It's like if a child can't be in the room with the dog or the cat, that they have another place to be when it occurs or something like that. And I don't know the right way to do it. I'm just saying that that's the allergy part is buried within the bowels of one of the other sections. So let's see if there's a way we can pull it out.
And I think, Andy, to that level, we also have to talk about staff, because you talk about cat urine, that's not good for pregnant women. We could have staff that's also, allergic to animals, and we just have to have consideration for adults that would be in as well. So I don't know how you're just taking out students and call it people. Just
Right.
generic people.
There's also a difference between policy and procedure, too. So I think now is important for me to just gather your thought, and then I'll deal with it.
And the other was just a question that I had, is that there have been animals in school, like guinea pigs and things in cages, and class animals and stuff. Does any of this impact existing procedures or ways that things are handled, or are these all sort of built around the way that things might already be done?
Yeah, this is pretty parallel to what we've done. What we've just not done is have what I call a partnership with an outside entity. And so because this was going to be between the Merrimack Public Library and us, we wanted something a little bit more formal. But I can tell you for those teachers who have had an animal like a gerbil in their classroom or whatever, they've been very conscientious about coming to school if we had snow days or whatever. So I would say past practice is pretty much in order here, as well as contacting and making sure the parents in the room know exactly what's going to be in the room and so on. And so even the designated children that are going to be included in the read will have a parent permission for it to occur. So, yeah, very parallel.
Okay. Any other feedback from the board? Jake?
This is just something picky even by Mr. Powell's standards. In bullet 2, it says the only animals and animal products, that is owl feces for dissection, should change it from feces to pellets, because it's not an important distinction, but it's one that I think should be made, because you don't dissect owl feces. That would be really gross.
Actually, my kids did. There was like bones in them. It was nasty.
Those are pellets, though, because
they're still nasty.
They're like owl hairballs. The feces would just be like what you get on your car.
I'm not sure what end of the stuff came out of the owl, to be honest with you. Okay, good stuff. Okay. And I actually just have one wordsmith as well, since we're talking about. It's the second to last paragraph on page 2. No animal shall be at school. No animal shall be in school. I think just to, clear up that whole school grounds and animal thing. Are there any other edits? Okay. That being said, with that feedback, we will have a second reading on December 7th. Onward to, gosh, I've lost track because we have, we're on to 13, other correspondence. Is there any correspondence that came to the board? Seeing possibly none, although Andy's thinking. Okay, having a moment. It's late. Comments. Are there any comments for the board, from the board? Yes, Andy.
This is directed at Dr. McLaughlin over there, who's talking, but that's all right. I think what you did tonight was outstanding with the curriculum. It's exactly what we wanted and everything like that. However, having them all on the same night with other topics, I think, is one of the things that extended it. So you might want to consider when we do these quarterly ones to maybe split them in half or something, or make sure there's a lighter agenda, because I think what occurred is they're so passionate about the curriculum that they do. As a result, I think we want to make sure we give them the right amount of time so we don't have to, jettison an agenda topic like we did tonight. But in my mind, it was spot on.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe we split it or pick a night when there's nothing else and we do it all or whatever. That'd be the only comment.
Cinda.
I agree with Andy. I did love the curriculum presentations. I thought that was outstanding. I think another reason for moving the topic regarding Smarter Balanced till our next school board meeting is the fact that our chairman will be here as well and able to ask the questions. And that was one of the other reasons I was supportive of it.
Great. Okay, and Davis. Davis has an opinion too. Would you like to share? No? Okay. Okay, the only comment I had was actually more of a question. I know that at the last town council meeting there was a question of whether we'd be having a joint meeting, and I know there's been discussion from this end. Do you have an update for us?
The joint meeting is also going to be discussed on November 19th. So that is when they will come up with proposed dates. We wait for those so that we're not doing one thing and they're doing another. So the 19th is a very important date.
Excellent.
I would say.
Look forward to the 20th when we find out what happens. So, additional comments? Mark?
Not a comment so much, but a question. And this may have worked out well by delaying the Smarter Balance presentation. So one of the points that I was going to make tonight is that, we're all new to this, and we're continuing to learn, and there are webinars and all kinds of things that we've been attending and meetings. So I just wonder this, so that the presentation can be really helpful to you. If, for instance, Board Member Schneider said he had a number of questions, I'm wondering if you, having had the results in your packet and having had a chance to go through, if based on that, you wanted to forward some questions to me. Well, the reason I'm asking is because it may well be that I would have to defer. If I know in advance, I might be able to do some homework. I just am trying to maximize your time. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I know about this and a lot of stuff that I don't. And if I knew in advance some particular questions that I wasn't able to answer, I could use this time to try to get you that so that you don't have to wait until December 21st or what have you.
So my response to you is touche.
Well played.
Well played, yes. As a valid request, and I will send them to you.
Okay, and that, obviously, anybody.
Absolutely. All board members who have questions, including Chair Ortega, who will be hopefully watching film and not laughing too hard at my efforts tonight. But we'll see what we can do. I raised my hand to my own question, so why not? That being said, submit them for in advance of the next meeting. If you could possibly get them a week before the meeting by December 1st, that will give Mark a few days of R&R with his family for the holiday and still get time to get his questions answered. So that would be ideal. Item number 15 is, 14, I'm sorry, new business. Is there any new business to come before the board? Marge.
What I want to put before you, I'm speaking on behalf of Nancy Rose right at this moment. Her intention is to come before you on December 7th to seek approval of a survey that she would like to do. And what she wants to do is to be able to send you the link to this survey so that you can be looking at it ahead. The survey is called Speak Up, and it's about it's a nationwide survey of all community stakeholders about their use of and thoughts about technology. She feels that would be an excellent thing for our community to participate in, and it's one of the things that I'm hopeful I can work with Matt, and we would perhaps put out that possibility through School Messenger, etc. But before that, we have as policy here that any survey that's done by anyone goes before you for your approval. So I'm announcing it tonight. She will send the link to you if you would be so kind to look at it. She'll come on the 7th, hopefully, although the list is growing, and share with you what her intent is about receipt of results. Has to do with our long-range planning.
Thank you. Any other new business to come before the board? Seeing none. Item number 15, committee reports. Do we have committee reports? I see Jake, and we'll just work our way down. I think we all do.
So in the spirit of tonight, when they were talking a lot about integrating education from the high school and then down to the middle school and elementary schools as well, I wanted to talk about two groups at the high school. Again, I'm going to try to piece this up so that it's on topic, each thing, rather than just telling you everything that happens at the high school every week. But they are the middle school Lego robotics team as well as the middle school quiz bowl team, which are two groups which previously did not exist, but they were started by high school students who sacrificed their time to come down to the middle school and mentor them, start the organization so that they can not only do something that the high schoolers love and think that they would enjoy, but also prepare themselves for those clubs at the high school. And this past weekend, the new middle school Lego team, I should say, they had a competition, and their competitions combine not only, I don't want to say simple, because it's still probably like more than I could do, but simple programming with Lego robotics, as well as a scientific research project. The theme for this competition was recycling, and they compete, which they did last weekend, and at that we had one of the co-captains of the high school first robotics team, which you've probably more familiar with. He mentored them and started it and created the group. The mech lead, the mechanical team lead for the high school, he was a referee there. 4 other high school first team members played the national anthem on the trombone for a trombone quartet. So the high school group really came together to introduce this new thing to the middle school, and I thought that it was really cool. And beyond that, there's also Quiz Bowl, which right now we have our trivia team, Quiz Bowl team. They kind of interchange names. And they meet once a week to answer irreverent questions. But right now they just tried out, I guess would be the best word. They take a preliminary test to do the Granite State Challenge, which is a statewide trivia competition in which they made it to semifinals last year. And since then, the Quiz Bowl team captain has gone to the middle school and started their own team there, along with Mrs. Danute, a social studies teacher, and I think she's still in charge of it there. And he goes down to the middle school once a week to introduce the kids to that club and not only prepare them, again, like I said earlier, for involvement in the high school clubs, but also just to bring a new extracurricular to the middle school that we have at our school that they are lacking. So
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Cinda.
PERC met last week, and there were a couple of new classes or new credits that were proposed, and one of them was an AP Studio Art class that really had to do with those students that are really looking to go further into art. And basically, there's still some things to be worked out, but it's basically a way to let those students put together a portfolio, allow them to get credit, and so on and so forth, so that it would be just another offering and another addition in the AP categories. And then secondly, there was an English as a second language elective, and I believe this comes from some regulatory type of stuff. And it's basically to give students credit for the work that they're doing when they're learning a second language. So basically they can, it's as they learn basic English and social skills, American social skills is part of it, as well as provide an opportunity so that they can get extra help with coursework in those mainstream classrooms. It's not that they weren't getting that before, but now this is a chance they can actually get some credit to reward them for the hard work that they're putting into it.
Sounds great. Andy.
So we may not have met last Monday, but there were two activities that I went to. One was the District Wellness Committee met in the afternoon on the 9th. They covered, they started going through the planning for the next, for this calendar year in terms of what activities the different buildings are going to do. Rich Grenier, I think, is going to be coming at some point in the next few weeks to talk about District Wellness. I'm not sure exactly the date, but he mentioned that he thought it was coming. The other thing we did is we talked a little bit about the TIC education panel that was proposed last fall, that they're looking at getting additional resources to have a panel about TIC education and Lyme awareness and things like that. So they're going to come to either the board or the superintendent with a proposal that's a little broader than what they did the last time. So they did that. And then on Monday evening, Planning and Building met. It wasn't a really big meeting because they had seen the capital improvement plan. They made some changes. We saw it. We voted on it. They reviewed the changes we made, which were none, really. Well, we did. We moved paving around, and we shared with them what it was. We talked a little bit about what was coming up this year, and they offered to do research and education around track, because as the track comes up, they have a lot of background in that from the previous time, so they offered to help us out as a board as far as educating that part. So,
thank you, Wendy. And as someone who had Lyme disease, that's great that you're staying on top of it. Seems like it's happening more often around here. And Davis.
The school district budget committee met last Tuesday. Reorganization was tabled until the next meeting because while there was a quorum, there was just barely a quorum. So due to the lack of participation, that was tabled. The business administrator did his usual fine review of the 2014-2015 budget and fielded several questions. There was a resignation announced, so they will be looking for someone to fill the 3-year term that Sylvie Perret?
I think Little Liberty might. La Liberty.
Okay. The chairman said her last name was Perret. I just want to make.
She was on the ballot with just the pair.
Okay. Anyway, to fill her position for the remainder of this year till the next election, and the next meeting is December 8th.
Sounds great. I had two. On November 5th, I filled in for Andy at Merrimack Safeguard. There was discussion about different youth risk surveys that are out there. There was discussion of the youth survey that we had for middle schoolers this year. It was actually last year's data that we discussed, so it would be for 7th and 8th graders. And the differences in data between male, female, 7th and 8th grade, and just some of the trend lines that they were seeing. Discuss promoting Safeguard through advertising, things like movie theaters, where we get a lot of the community attending, and a lot will go as families. So you have to get more awareness to Safeguard and some of the programs that they have. And then the Beyond Influence representative went through a very well done presentation that she provides to parents regarding some high risk behavior in youth and what to look for and how to talk to your kids about it. Everything from setting the stage to the content and making it where it's not so I guess preparing for the worst type thing when you're talking to your kids about things that aren't fun to talk about. So it was very well done, and I think the committee got a lot out of some of the content that I think even was surprising to us, about high risk things in the home and things to be around. On the 10th, I went to the New Hampshire School Boards Association Board of Directors meeting. We're going to have some interesting resolutions coming before us in the next few weeks. We as a board annually discuss the resolutions, discuss our position as a board on those resolutions. And as a delegate, I will be bringing those votes forward in January on the 16th. The date has been moved to the 16th because of scheduling conflicts, and hopefully football won't be affected. But if it is, I'll still go. But the other reason is I will be put up to the Delegate Assembly as the nominee for second vice president. So the goal is essentially second vice president, first vice president, and then president. So it'll be 16, 17, 18 for the New Hampshire School Boards Association.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I have to be reelected first because if you're not reelected, you can't serve. And actually our president is also, president-elect will be up for reelection in the spring as well, so it should be fun. So, but that is the latest. The legislative updates and legal updates were also given. Of course, a lot of questions are still coming about with recording in schools. That's the biggest legal question they're getting right now. They're talking about webinar options. We know that a lot of our districts can't, either because of scheduling or because of proximity to Concord, can't really make a lot of the events that they offer. So being able to not only do stuff in the field, but have stuff online for them to do, and different technology options that are affordable that could be delivered with ease. So that is what we have. And then, of course, our next meeting will be at the Delegate Assembly in January. That being said, I guess I have to run the rest of the meeting. Hold on. The next item is public comments. I think we're up to public comments. Are there any comments from the public? Going once and going twice. There it is. And we will sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion to go into non-public session per RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, subsections A, B, and C. Do I have a motion? Made by Cinda. Do I have a second? Second by Andy. A roll call vote. Cinda, how do you vote?
In favor.
Andy?
In favor.
Davis?
In favor.
And I, the vice chair, vote in favor. Thank you and good night.